All right. Good morning, everybody, to our July Provider Supports Subcommittee meeting. My name is Dave Mayer, and I am one of the co-chairs for our Provider Support Subcommittee. Really appreciate everyone being here today, and hopefully you're finding yourself in a coolish space as we get going this morning. Before we get going, we just do have a couple of reminders. Oh, can you just go back one quick one, Jessica? Thank you. Just as a quick reminder to mute your phone and computer upon entry. And obviously, we have some good folks with us today that will also, grab those that maybe don't have the opportunity to do that. All right, now let's move on to the next one. All right, so this will be very key for today's conversation. I just want to review again for those that have been here before and need a reminder, and those that have not joined us before about the interpretation channels. On the screen right now, you should see a simple three-step instruction for interpretation channels, both in English and in Spanish. You're going to start by clicking on the interpretation globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Then you will click the language you want to hear, and then you will click mute original audio to silence all other languages. This will be the first of multiple reminders today, both to our presenters and to each other as people come off mute to share thoughts or ideas, that we do need to make sure that we are speaking in a very clear and slower pace manner in order to be able to give our interpreters enough time an ability to be able to do that interpretation. So everyone that is on this call has the opportunity to be able to share in all of the good information and conversation that is happening. So we do want to thank our interpreters for being with us today. And you will hear from us once in a while, just reminders to slow down before each one of our presenters start as well. So again, if you do have any trouble with getting access to your interpretation, if you want to put that in the chat, then one of our co-chairs or awesome community engagement DCYF staff will be able to help you out. All right. So today we do have a very packed agenda with some really great topics. And so we don't have as long today for introductions. And so today we are going to do this primarily through the chat in Zoom. So for all those that have joined today, if you please in the chat could share your name, where you're located or what program that you're working with, what your role is, and this one's always a fun one, kind of as we get going in the summer. But what are you either watching? Netflix, Prime, Hulu, HBO, whatever, Apple, whatever it might be. What are we watching right now? What's the binge show that you're having fun with this summer? Or a good book that you're reading this summer, either sitting out on your porch or at the beach. This is always kind of a cool question because it sparks great ideas for other people that might not be thinking about these books and these shows. So let's get some recommendations going in the chat. So if you can just take 2 or 3 minutes as people are joining here, again, your name, where you're located, or your program, what your role is, and what you are watching or reading right now. We'll just give everybody 2 or 3 minutes to get that into the chat. So Katrina is with the Senior Early Learning Director at Northwest Center Kids in Seattle, watching the final season of White Lotus on HBO. It's a good one. Blinn from Wenatchee, home daycare lead teacher. We got a lot coming in right now. Reading Project 1619 from Sandra. Matt Judge is reading Notebooks of Sonny Rollins. We have a nature book that's being read. Debbie's reading By the Fire We Carry by Rebecca Nagel. This is great. Usually we have, oh, I'm going to go to Emily Morgan now here. She just finished Love Island. So that's good. I was going to say we have a lot of readers going on in our group right now, but now we've switched over to Love Island. So that's good that we're still binging some good shows this summer as well. Aaron's reading a fun book called Babel by R.F. Kuang. Probably not pronouncing that very well, but I'll give it a shot. Reruns of Frasier and reading Share. That's a cool one from Leanne at Harvard Park Children's Learning Center. All right. Michelle is watching For All Mankind and just finished reading House in the Carillion Sea. This is cool. Big Brother is back on. There we go. We got Love Island and Big Brother. This is good. This is good. Good summer binging. So Michelle is into crime documentaries lately, which is great. Let's see. We got Bachelor in Paradise happening. All right. No spoilers though, too, for any of these. Good point by Michelle. Not everybody's on the same timeline right now either, so that's good. Um, we have another book recommendation, Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. That was Janelle over in Newport, Washington. So when you guys have an opportunity, as we're kind of going through the first part of our day here, keep these introductions coming in the chat, and people can kind of scroll through those and read what everybody is watching and reading, and write some notes for yourself so you can go back to these and enjoy them on your own time. A couple more that just came in. Um, Actress of a Certain Age by Jeff Hiller, and a highly recommended show by Somebody Somewhere on Max. And then Presumed Innocent on Apple with Jake Gyllenhaal. Awesome. Um, oh, and you went to the BB premiere watch party in Seattle. Julie, well played. We'll have to get more information about that one later. All right. So thank you all for participating in those introductions. And now, like I said, keep as people are joining, please keep those coming into the chat. Ginny and Georgia. That is a good one. I have my daughter is watching that show. Cool. All right, Jessica, I think that we can start the process of reviewing. We have three sections of different meeting materials to look at here. So the first one is going to be the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Jessica just put a link to those in the chat. And so if you want to click on that link, we're going to take 1 to 2 minutes to review it, and then we will open it up to any questions. Again, if you're just joining, if you do have an opportunity in the chat to put your name, the program you work for, and then your either the show that you're binging or a book that you're reading for this summer. And then in 1 minute, we'll ask if there's any questions from last meeting's meeting minutes. All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments from the meeting minutes from our last meeting? You can either raise your hand and or come off mute. All right. Seeing none, let's move Jessica to the next uh, document, which is going to be the feedback loop. Again, Jessica has put the link to the feedback loop in the chat if you want to click on that. And I believe that it was also sent last evening to you in your email as well. And because it came in late, just let's take another minute or two for everyone to open that up and take a quick glance through the items that are on that feedback loop. So we'll be back again here now in 1 to 2 minutes for any questions. Take about 30 more seconds to work through those notes. All right. Does anybody have any comments or questions from the feedback loop? Oh, Lois, that's awesome. Waiting to binge this season of The Gilded Age. I know that my daughter is also excited for the first section of the Stranger Things season 5 that's going to be coming out in November as well. So, any feedback loop comments or questions? Okay, let's go to the last of our three documents. That one this time is not in a link, but is in a PDF that Jessica has just put into the chat as well, both in English and in Spanish. And so if you click on that PDF, you should get the agency updates. And again, those were sent later last evening, so you should see them in your inbox as well. So let's take another minute to read through this, and then we'll come back for any questions. Right, about 30 more seconds to read through those. All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments from the agency updates? Feel free to raise your hand. Outside of our binging, oh, go ahead, Sandra. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The education updates. Um, we've got a couple of new staff starting. Um, and do we know the timeline for getting UW to approve their transcripts?
So Sandra, we are in process of having all that set up with Cultivate Learning. Are there questions about the initial hiring requirements? So they're going to be doing ed verification. I'm just trying to figure out what you would need from them before someone is hired.
Well, right now, luckily, with a high school diploma, I can hire them. But because we have ECAP and SPP preschool, I've got to have the AA requirements. And some of them are coming in from different countries. So it's going to be a little more tedious with the transcripts.
Yeah, let me connect with the team and I will follow up with you either offline or at some point during the meeting today.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sandra. Thanks, Nicole. Any other questions on agency updates and or the meeting minutes or feedback loop? Jessica, I wonder before we move on if we want to flip back to the interpretation channel just very quickly before we go to the first topic, since we've had many people join. Again, thank you. Again, those that can see the screen right now, we want everyone to select their interpretation channels for today's meeting. So as you can see the three-step instructions, both in English and Spanish on your screen. Click on the interpretation globe icon at the bottom of the screen. Click the language you want to hear, and then click mute original audio to silence all other languages. We have two great interpreters with us today, so this is just another reminder to please speak slowly, both for presenters and for those that come off mute to share thoughts and contribute to the conversation. After each one of our sections today, we will have a mentee survey to fill out about that particular section. And so we will give you 3 to 5 minutes at the end of each one of these sections to make sure that you have enough time to fill out, your thoughts about that particular section. All right. Well, without further ado, I want to throw this over to my co-chair colleague, Julie, who is going to be introducing our first section and presenters for the day. Julie, take it away.
Thank you. I just want to mention right off the bat that I was having a lot of quiet parts. And so I went down to interpretation and unmuted original audio. And then I was surprised to hear somebody was talking. So you might need to play around with it a little bit. That happened to me on the last meeting too. So I don't know what that's all about. Anyway, we're going to welcome Matt Judge. He is the Federal Initiatives and Collaboration Administrator who will provide an overview of the upcoming 2025 market rate survey, including its purpose, how provider impact directly impacts childcare subsidy rates, and how to participate. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Julie. It's great to be sharing space with you all again. It's been a while. So on the next slide, I'll give you an overview of what we'll talk about today. A lot of you are probably pretty familiar with the market rate survey and maybe even also the cost of quality care component from having filled it out in 2024. But just to make sure we're all on the same page, I'll provide some background. And then I'll talk about some of the state legislative and federal requirements that drive timelines and the content of the survey and the report that we generate from it. I'll also talk about the early educator design team. This is a group of providers that weighed in significantly in ways that impact the cost of quality care component. So that's an important discussion. And then I'll talk about learnings and from the last survey of this kind and how they're helping DCYF to set some priorities for the upcoming study so that we can get the best data possible. Then I'll talk about some of the more concrete details around the timelines. We're on a bit of a compressed schedule for reasons that I'll explain in just a minute. And then I hope to give a substantial amount of time to get feedback from y'all, advice, reactions, or whatever you'd like to contribute. So next slide, please. So before we get into the details about the survey, study, and report, I just want to talk a bit about the why it's important for providers, why it's important for the whole early care and education system in Washington State. So as you may know, the legislature sets subsidy base rates for the Working Connections Child Care Subsidy Program based on market rate data. That's been the methodology for all the time that I've been working in this field. We set those rates based on the market rate in order that the subsidy rate be competitive with the rates that providers are charging in the private market, so that they're not disincentivized from serving children who receive those Working Connections subsidies. So any of the rates that you see, whether you're a licensed family home provider, center provider, or a school age only provider, the rates that you see for different child ages and different geographic regions, those are based on market rate data. So the responses we receive from the different geographic locations for the different age children that providers are charging in the private market, those drive those rates. So it's really significant, the data we get back from providers. And, we get, you can have statistically very good response rate, or you can have a lot of reliability in these surveys with response rates below 50%. However, there is an impact when there's a low response rate for specific geographic regions. So for example, if you have a region with only a handful of providers in it, and we only hear from a couple of them about their market rates, then we have very limited data upon which to base the market rate. And some of it may be erratic. Responses are, prone to error or misunderstanding. So response is really important, particularly in those regions with less providers in them. And so this next bullet here, the fourth bullet, is really about the cost of quality care component of this. So as I said, the state has always based the Working Connection subsidy base rate on those market rates, the rates charged in the private market. But we understand that the private market does not support providers to pay their staff a living wage and do many of the things that they would like to do for their programs, and that therefore setting subsidy rates based on private pay rates reinforces that market issue. So the state has been interested for some time in looking into the cost of quality care and compensating providers based on what is necessary for them to actually do that work and to pay their staff a living wage to do that work. So switching to if the state were to switch to that model, the bottom line is that providers would receive a higher payment. And we think it would also probably be a bit more rational in terms of paying providers what is needed to support the business. But right now, based on the legislature's actions, we're still in a world where we set rates based on a market rate. The idea behind this survey, just like last year's, the 2024 survey, was that we get data that supports both methodologies so the state can make a transition if the legislature decides to do that. So it's a combined survey so that we have options about how we set subsidy rates. Next slide, please. So I covered this a little bit in the last slide, but just so you have an understanding of the federal context, the Child Care and Development Fund under Administration for Children and Families in Health and Human Services on the federal level sets rules for how the states create their base rates. They say that states can either use the market rate or an alternative methodology. And like I laid out, market rate surveys ask the providers what they charge by region, by child type, by child age, and you set rates based on that. Cost of quality care is one alternative to that. And a couple other states and jurisdictions, New Mexico and Washington, D.C., for example, have moved to cost of care as their alternative methodology. So as I said, this survey provides data where the state could go either direction. We, as the fourth or the third bullet here indicates, we've already received permission from Administration for Children and Families to switch to the cost of quality care whenever the state elects to do that. And so we're, poised once we have this up-to-date data to go either direction, and the legislature will make that decision. Next slide, please. So on the federal level, there are just a couple of main requirements around these kinds of studies, whether you're using the market rate or a cost of care methodology. You have to reflect variations by geographic region. We set our rates by region to meet that requirement. Of course, by category of provider, meaning centers versus family homes and the other types, and age of child. So our payment rates and our studies in the past meet that requirement by gathering data on all those topics. We're also required to describe how providers currently participate in subsidy or how many are doing it, really to identify the barriers to serving children who receive subsidy benefits. A cost of quality care study specifically has to analyze cost of care necessary to meet health and safety requirements, quality and staffing requirements, and the cost of higher quality care. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Under federal rules, states are required to do one of these studies and base their rates on it every 3 years. And that was the cadence we were on. Under Senate Bill 5752, passed this year, the legislature decided that we would do this survey every 2 years. And it specifically calls out that we're setting rates based on the market rate. And then it stated that the next survey report needs to be due June 1st of 2026. So that puts us on a bit of a compressed schedule from where we thought we might be doing a survey every 3 years, but that's okay. We're proceeding. That means that we're really looking at needing to do the survey in the fall in order to avoid the holidays. And I think I'll talk more about timelines in just a second. So next slide.
Matt, there's a question. Dave, your hand's up.
Oh, thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, no worries, Matt. Just for those that maybe aren't as maybe are kind of new to either the state or to licensing, how do they receive the survey in order to be able to answer that, to be able to give good market rate information? How does that come to them?
Great question. So in the past, we've sent emails and regular mail notices to providers And last year they included a QR code that you can, open with your phone. And the principal way of answering these surveys is online. We do, and last year, at a certain point in the survey process, we begin calling folks that we haven't heard from, to try to make sure that we get a good response rate. And so then staff with our partners at Western Washington University who assist us with the survey can help folks finish it on the phone if they prefer to do that way. And in some cases, we've noted that, for example, folks who speak Somali prefer that option. So that's one of the principal uses of the phone survey. And then we also have, center providers, or we have center organizations that oversee many programs, and filling out the survey a dozen or more times just is not going to work for them. And so we have a spreadsheet, or Western Washington University produces a spreadsheet that's a little bit more handy for providing survey responses for multiple sites. So it's a per site survey. So there are a few ways, but the principal way is through the online survey and the QR code, or and we provide links also in emails to providers.
Cool. And is there a general kind of timeline that people should expect to get it on an annual basis?
So this year, since as I was saying, we need to have the report done by June 1st, and there's a pretty lengthy internal review for legislatively required reports at DCYF.
Yeah.
We're going to deploy this survey October 1st, and you'll see some timelines written down in a slide or two. But it's varied over the years when we've actually conducted the survey, but this year it'll need to be in the fall.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
And sorry if I didn't see hands up. Thanks for the help with that. I wanted to talk a bit about the early educator design team, because this is a really important component of the cost of quality care side of things. When you look at what it costs to provide care, certain assumptions you need to decide about them. For example, what is the level of pay that staff would receive? That's the principal, that's the most important cost driver in a program. So, DCYF and working with providers and Department of Commerce, we've developed a cost model, but we really wanted to turn to providers specifically to provide the assumptions about some of these major cost drivers, so that we have a cost model that reflects what the community of providers thinks ought to be the standard. So we met with the early educator design team in 2023, a group of really diverse providers, and they gave us lots of recommendations. I can only summarize them briefly here. They recommended, most importantly, that we assume a living wage based on the MIT living wage scale, that we assume some significant benefits for staff in early care and education programs, strong support in these recommendations for family engagement, meaning more staff time so that you have time to do engagement, more staff time so that you're supporting planning and release time in programs. They wanted high quality education materials and curriculum to be supported as standard through the subsidy base rate, and plenty of time for professional development supports for staff. So I just include this so that there's an understanding that the cost of quality model is really driven by providers in significant ways. And I see a question from Lois in the chat. Under the new federal administration, are there any major differences in report requirements? Not so far. All these requirements are found in the CFR that was in the lead to one of my earlier slides. And this new administration hasn't seen any rulemaking yet. I'll be in DC next week with my federal partners and other state administrators, and we'll be interested to hear how they are interpreting the rules and laws, and to see if there's any difference. I'm not expecting to hear anything significant about this survey, but never say never. Next slide. Sorry about that, Norma. I will slow down. See your comment in chat. So again, for the cost of quality care portion of this, there are really three major components that go into cost of care. In purple, you see there, or maybe it's purple on your end, personnel costs, staff. That's the most significant. Then in the bluish color, quality enhancements. We have this information from external sources. The MIT Living Wage Standard helps us determine personnel costs. And we already have a model for the quality enhancements, those things like curriculum, materials, professional development. So what we'll be looking at in this survey is updating the data we have on non-personnel costs. These are things like rent, mortgage, utilities. In the past, we've used existing data on insurance. That might be something we look to get specific information on through the survey, but definitely going to be asking about rent, mortgage, and utilities. Those are major cost drivers. Next slide, please.
Matt, it's
Yeah.
Amy. Hi. I noticed a comment from about 2 minutes ago in the chat, and I think it's the interpreter just asking for a little bit slower talking.
Will do. Thank
Thanks.
you. These are just some lessons. These are priorities that DCYF has for the study just based on lessons learned from the last study. We want to increase participation in the survey, particularly from school-age providers. There was a technical issue with our 2024 survey that I think prevented some school-age only providers from participating. So we want to address that so that we have better data on those rates for the reasons that I mentioned before, particularly around school-age care. As I mentioned, need to update the overhead costs, rent, mortgage, and utilities. That's very important to cost of quality. In order to get to increased participation, it would be really helpful if we streamlined the survey. The longer it is, the harder it is to complete. And we're looking to get that response rate up. So we also want to streamline the report, and these things kind of go hand in hand. In the 2024 report, there's discussion of cost of quality care in a couple of different ways. We really want to limit that discussion to the kind of cost of quality care that the early educator design team recommended, and we're seeking federal approval to narrow the scope of that discussion. That means that this report discusses really the most robust cost of quality care model that the state would contemplate. So that's an important streamlining. And then there are a few questions, several questions in prior surveys that asked interesting things of providers, things that are good to know, but the response rate is really, really important to the accuracy of the rates. And so weighing those two things against each other, having lots of interesting data that's good to know versus the core essential stuff for setting base rates. I think we want to see if we can get better response and have a report that speaks more directly by narrowing some of that down. It's important that the survey report compare cost of quality and market rate survey-based rates so that policymakers and just anyone reading it kind of understands the significance of the difference and why the difference arises. So we learned a lot about how to communicate more clearly about comparing those things, particularly with the legislative audience that's going to be receiving this report. So we'll work to clarify that in the report. Next slide. So timelines. Between now and August, we will be developing the survey questions, doing some of that narrowing and streamlining and addressing technical issues, making it flow better, trying to make it easier to take. Do some preliminary communications in September, hopefully priming providers to receive the survey and take the time out of their day because we really appreciate the time it takes to fill out the survey. Then deploy it in October so that it's open for 3 months, October, November, and December. And then we begin drafting the report based on the study in January. And I mentioned a long internal review period. There it is, in the second to last bullet, between March and May. We'll review the report internally to make sure that it's ready for all audiences. And then, as I mentioned, Senate Bill 5752 requires that report be delivered by June 1st, 2026. So some of these questions we've asked in the past, maybe they're better questions, but these are always still relevant, at least for DCYF. So this is the period where you can provide feedback either on these questions or others or reactions that you've had to what you've heard. But of course, we're just curious if you've taken the survey in the past, if you encountered issues or things that made it slow, confusing, complicated. Always welcome feedback so that we can address those issues. If you have suggestions about outreach to providers and communications to support them in taking the survey, curious about that. If we can support providers in spreading the word to their colleagues who might not have completed it yet, happy to help with that. And if you have suggestions for the report, if you've had a chance to read it, if there were sections of it that confused you or you felt could have been communicated better, would be very curious to know that. So those are just a few possibilities to respond.
Dave, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, just a suggestion. Now that the newsletter is consolidated, it would be great to have it included in there. I'm not connected to an individual program, and so I wouldn't be communicated the timeline of when it's coming out and things like that. But if I saw it in that newsletter that it was open, I can communicate directly to multiple programs to make them aware to be looking into their inboxes to open it and complete it. So that I think that's just another good spot for it to live when it's open.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Good thought.
Matt, were there any questions that you heard from providers that were tripping them up? Honestly, I don't remember the questions. So I would have to look through it again and then be like, oh, that one was tricky. I don't know.
The thing that's more present in my mind is the recommendations that Western Washington University had after completion of the last survey, because they could see on their end places where providers might get stuck, where they might get confused. So, for example, in the sections where providers list their rates, there was one place where they could indicate how that rate was, whether that was hourly, whether that was weekly, monthly. But if that isn't restated multiple times, I think there's a tendency for providers to sometimes default to the way they think of it and then not provide and then we don't know the information about how that rate is measured in time. So similarly with when we ask questions about staff wages, same thing, need to provide plenty of opportunity to have them see or show what their timeline is when they're giving figures. So there's several technical details like that where we think that we can make the survey clearer so that the information we get back is clearer. Breaking up the different sections about different child age categories so that providers aren't just providing all their responses in one giant chart. I think that would just help it flow better and feel less overwhelming. And, you can just get visually lost sometimes in a big chart like that. So we noticed a couple things that seem to be producing, in some instances, odd responses that we could address.
Okay, that's good to know. personally, I would think you would just put one thing, like what's your daily rate? Or what's your monthly rate? So it's just, everybody can answer that, I would think, but anyway,
Well,
there was a question from Lois in the chat about, well, a suggestion actually, it'd be good to have 3 or 4 providers test the system before it opens up to the whole. I imagine you can find a few, including myself from this group, meaning Lois. Researchers are great, but we are in the weeds.
yeah, good thought. Maybe in September, when we're preparing for communications, that might be a good time for some testing with some providers.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, you could come to this group
Yeah, I was going to
and
say,
go
yeah.
through it.
Uh, how about I follow up with provider supports about possible volunteers or supporting defined folks who might be interested to do that?
That'd be great. Do you guys have other questions for Matt? On this topic? Matt will be here again later on another topic. Okay, well then we might as well go ahead and do the Menti. Oh, thanks, Jessica. She put it in there. And you can share your thoughts on this topic. If everybody could click on that in the chat and just take a few minutes to provide some feedback.
I'm seeing a comment there in Spanish that I'm not, my Spanish is bad now.
So Marlene put a question in the chat. Marlene, are you able to also interpret what's in the Menti and maybe delete the Spanish so there's no or copy the Spanish in and then do the translation? But anyway, she did say, hello, I have a concern. It is a little off topic, but why does the state not take into account what families pay in rent for subsidies? Oh, when you're authorizing families. Okay, okay. I think that's just about approvals for families. And yeah, that is not this topic, but that's something that you could ask the subsidy folks.
Yeah, I'd be interested to have a conversation with Jason or Mikey, the subsidy administrator, about how we can think about living expenses factoring into subsidy.
Yeah, it might be good for us to have Jason on at some point and ask some questions about.
So Jason is actually on right now, and we
Oh.
can have him weigh in on this. You know, one of the things I'll just say is that when we look at how families are determined eligible and what income we count and don't count, that is actually something that is based on federal requirements. And then ultimately also ends up being based on what the state legislature asks us to do as well, because anytime there are changes in either what you're counting towards income or increasing income eligibility limits, that can increase the population that is being served, which is a good thing. I want to note that is a good thing. However, it takes funding to do that. But Jason, do you want to talk a little bit about the rent piece in particular? I know this comes up quite often.
We're
Yeah,
really, yeah, just real quick, because I know we're off topic and we need to move on. Thanks for being here, though.
yeah, no problem. I like to listen in and join when I can. I just happen to be listening in. Real quickly, um, for childcare subsidy, the grant requirements for this tie us back to state median income and are silent on deductions. Going back to what Nicole was mentioning, that means we would need some guidance on how we would include that. Other programs like Basic Food or SNAP actually have very specific requirements allowing for different income deductions built into the federal requirements. So that's why it's different between subsidy and something like SNAP.
Thank you. Thanks for chiming in. Thanks for being here. And thanks to Matt for your presentation and your collaboration and your answering questions. It's great to have you at the meeting. We're going to be moving on to our next topic. And so I'm going to pass it over to Katie.
Yeah, so good morning. And our next great topic, as we all have been biting our fingernails to know where the budget is, what happened, where the money's going, all our updates that are related to the implementation of the budget this year with early learning. So we have Assistant Secretary of Early Learning, Nicole Rose, and then the DCYF's Policy Advisor, Melissa Cheeseman. And I will turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Katie, and thanks everyone for being here this morning. I want to note as we go through these slides that there are a lot of words on the slides, and I'm not going to read everything that is on here, but you have them in the chat so you can go back and take a look at them. I'm going to highlight some of the updates that are likely most relevant to this group. And there's going to be a mixture of bills that we are implementing, some of which you will hear a little bit about later. And then there's also going to be some information about budget. And I'll spend a little time talking about the ECAP reductions as well. And then Melissa is going to talk with us about some of the pieces related to reporting that we are thinking about as we move into the next legislative session. So we can actually go ahead and skip 2 slides. And this first slide is showing you all of the bills that passed this legislative session, or a section of bills that had passed this legislative session. There were things that were related to adjusting the age requirements for ECAP, all the way to really thinking about provisions for family home providers that are overseen and certified by a federal military service. I think the key takeaway from this slide is that all of these things are on track to implement. And you're going to hear a bit more about staff qualifications this afternoon and some of the work that we are doing to convene that work group. And really looking forward to hearing from you about that. So this just highlights some of the bills that were recently passed. If we go to the next slide, this is really focusing in on our Working Connections childcare rates and compliance. One of the things that I will note on this is that some of these things will not be implemented until July 1. So the center base rate increase does not go into effect until July 1, 2026. And then one of the things I wanted to call your attention to was the Working Connections rate alignment. There is some additional information about this in the feedback loop, but sometimes we're getting questions about what does it mean to remove the hold harmless for that subset of providers? And who are those providers, and where might those rates be a little bit higher than what was in the 2024 market rate survey? And so I'm just going to drop an example of that in the chat. So an example of this is in some of our school age rates, when we looked at the 2024 market rate survey, they are lower than the 85th percentile than the 2024 market rate survey for Region 1 and Region 4. So in that instance, there would be a rate decrease for those providers. And what I would say is that really speaks to what Matt was just talking about and the importance of providers participating in the cost of quality care and market rate survey. So it was great to hear from you all about helping us think through the communications plan. And I really love the idea of coming back here or talking with a couple of providers about the questions to see how they resonate, because we really do want as many people as possible to participate in that. The next two items on here are related to the collective bargaining agreement for licensed family home providers, and all of that is set to be implemented on July 1. That includes a variety of things, including base rate increases, the grants and enhancements, and there were some funds in which we could enroll some providers in healthcare. So all of that is on track to implement. One of the things that we've talked quite a bit about here are the child care development requirements related to prospective payment and enrollment-based payment. And we are working to implement those in late summer 2026. And those are places where I know Jason and Matt brought questions and conversations here about how to best implement prospective payment and enrollment-based payment. And so we're working to implement that, sometimes with a few tweaks with what the legislature asked us to do. On the following slide, one of the things that I want to highlight on this is the co-payment piece. Just as a reminder that co-payments remain the same for families until October 1st, 2026. And that's when we'll see that first change. And so the team is working to do that. And then I want to highlight the 12-month eligibility determination on this as well, because you're going to see this come up again at the end when I talk about decision packages and decision packages that DCYF is submitting. And so this provision really was saying that once a family is determined eligible, so for newly eligible families that are coming in, their eligibility date starts at the date they are determined eligible, not at the time that they are authorized for care. And this was something that was looked at as the legislature was going through the budgeting process and looking at some potential savings related to this. And we have a technical correction we're going to need to do here because we cannot implement that as soon as the legislature would like us to do so. So you'll hear more about that in a bit. On the next slide, one of the things that we had heard from providers and from you all was really the benefit of childcare employees having some expanded eligibility for Working Connections childcare. And we've received some questions around what would this mean when this expanded eligibility goes away? Because it did go away on July 1. We're doing a manual workaround to implement that. And I wanted to share some numbers with you all so you could see a little bit about who is eligible now. And I'll acknowledge that they do have a reduced copayment and that will go away. But of the 2,300 families that were eligible for reduced copayment, we anticipate that the majority of those families will still be eligible for Working Connections childcare at reapplication, but approximately 375 would be over income. So just wanted to provide those numbers for you all. We also removed the eligibility, the expanded eligibility for registered apprenticeships. Just so you know, at the time that that was implemented, there were about 12 families who were receiving that expanded eligibility.
Nicole, it's Melissa.
Someone has their hand up.
Yeah, there we go. Consuelo, do you have your hand up? Do you have a question?
Sí, buenos días. Mi pregunta es de ahorita lo que estaban diciendo. Yo soy de la región, creo que soy de Otelo, Washington. Mi pregunta es de lo mismo. Yo siempre contesto ¿cómo le dicen? Las encuestas que mandan. Siempre yo las contesto, muchas. Cuando yo les digo a muchas proveedoras de aquí, siempre las hacen. Mi pregunta también es de que lo que hacen en la 2, la 3 y la 4 es lo que hacemos todos nosotros también, ¿no? Digo, no sé por qué nos bajaron tanto a nosotros. Lo mismo que hacen ellas, hacemos nosotros. Gastamos lo mismo, y creo.
Consuelo, ¿estás hablando de tu hogar?
Sí.
Ah, ok. A ver, déjame ver si lo van a interpretar en un momentito.
Oh, muchas gracias.
I don't know if the interpreters are going to say this, or I did jot the question down and I'm happy to say it. Let me know. And I'm in the English channel, so if you are interpreting it, I can't hear, so let me know. Yep, we can hear you. Yes. Norma, were you able to get that question? And can you switch to the English channel to interpret the question? Or I'm happy to do it. Let me know. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, and so thank you for that question. And that's about the cost of quality care question and rates for family homes. So what I will note is that rates for licensed family homes are bargained, and that they are based on the market rate survey. When I was speaking about those rates, it was centers in particular. And in some cases, it's about the number of providers who have responded. So Matt and I can take that question also and put that in the feedback loop as well, so that we can provide a bit more detail around rates and how response and rate setting interact. Thank you.
Thank you guys for that clarification. Hopefully that helped her understand better.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next slide here. Keep going on our implementation journey. And I want to talk a little bit about ECAP, the Early Childhood Education and Assistance Program, which is our state-funded pre-K, which there was some significant reduction in that space. And what you're seeing on here is an update on how those reductions were implemented. That has occurred, and ECAP contractors have received their new contracts. What I want to highlight for you all as the legislature reduced funding for approximately 3,000 slots. We had 46 of our 62 ECAP contractors that were affected due to that reduction. And there were some things that DCYF considered when we were taking a look at that, including contractors that had 40 slots or fewer, those that were asking to exchange part day to school day slots. And then we also took into consideration 10 designated catchment areas where there was disproportionate kindergarten readiness. And I'll show you those 10 catchment areas on the next slide. And I want to kind of introduce that here because you're going to hear us talking about those 10 areas a little bit over the next bit of time. You're going to hear about outreach for child care subsidy, outreach for ECAP. You may hear about these 10 catchment areas around prioritization as we're looking at other funding. But these were 10 districts that we worked with our Office of Innovation, Alignment, and Accountability, where we saw that there was disproportionate kindergarten readiness, as well as sometimes high eligibility for free and reduced price meals. That's what that FRMEAL is in there. And so we were really trying to take a look at some of this information as we were making really tough decisions around ECAP reductions. And 3,000 slots is a significant amount. And, you know, one of the things I'll also note as we went through this process is that, you know, we didn't always get it right. And we were able to come back and do a little bit of refinement in spaces where the impact was a little bit more disproportionate than we had originally looked at, and that included things like contractor viability. We looked at small slot requests. So if there was a reduction that was a higher percentage, we really tried to go back and take a look at that. So on the following slide, you'll see where we are with ECAP slots as we look at what had been in fiscal year 25 and where we are in fiscal year 26. That final bold line is where we landed with the final slots contracted. You can see that last year we were sitting at over 16,000 slots that were contracted out. And now we have 14,395 slots that are contracted out. So in subsidy and in ECAP, we really want to continue to think about how we can support increased access. And so you'll be hearing more from us about communications plans and toolkits for families and providers. So ECAP reductions, this is where the final amounts landed. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. This is just some more information about ECAP and Eclipse in particular. There were reductions in the Complex Needs Fund and in Eclipse, which is our therapeutic services that are layered on top of ECAP. You can see that the Complex Needs Funds are going to 50 contractors for this fiscal year, and Eclipse will be in 11 contracts. And then there was the elimination of funding for early ECAP, and so that reduction has been implemented as well. We want to go on to the next slide. We are working to implement trauma-informed care and dual language designation moving forward. One of the things that we are looking at in the trauma-informed care space in particular is working to adjust those to the provider types that were designated. And this will be going to licensed family homes at this point. And so in order to do this, we have paused trauma-informed care awards for July and August to work through that implementation with our union partners. And then we can move to the next slide. Just a couple of things around, what implementation will look like as it relates to our equity grants and our child care complex needs fund. There were significant reductions in each of these areas. And so one of the things that we are really looking at is, again, those 10 communities that I just talked about. How might we prioritize those communities that had disproportionate outcomes? So we will look at that in both equity grants and our child care complex needs fund. And in our child care complex needs fund, the tribal early learning grants went away as well. And so we are working with our Office of Tribal Relations to look at how we were currently prioritizing tribal providers to see if there are any updates that we need to do in that space as well. And then in early learning facilities, there was a reduction in the technical assistance amounts, and that has been implemented through the reduced budget. We want to go to the next slide. This just is the final slide on our reductions. I think one of the things I wanted to highlight on this piece is the infant and early childhood mental health consultation. With that reduced funding, there will be 2 consultants in each Child Care Aware of Washington region beginning July 1 of this year, and there will be 1 bilingual consultant at the state office. And this is something that we'll continue to look at and see, how many providers are being able to access these services, which they can access through their early achievers coach. So those are all of the reductions, and in some cases there were some increases as well that have been implemented to date. And like I said, you have those so you can read through all of the words that are on the slide at a time that is convenient for you. And as always, if there are questions that you have about that, please do let us know. I know that it is really challenging to hear about pauses, delays, and reductions. The care that you provide for kids is so important and so appreciated. And I am confident that we have a strong foundation. And when we talk about the market rate survey and the cost of quality care work, we have some opportunities so that when funding is available, we can really go back and say, here's what we know is needed to best support kids and families and the providers that are serving them. The space that we continue to be in is one of not as much funding as we had in the past. And so often when we have come here and talked about decision packages, We've had some great things to really try and increase rates. We have heard from you about the complex needs of children who are coming in, and children coming in with special needs, and how can we look at rates related to that. And we're in an environment where we have to really be thoughtful and have some fairly reduced asks to the legislature as we go into the next legislative session, which is also a short legislative session. I believe I had come here and shared that we were really looking at how we can talk about an increase in the special needs rate. And given the current budget environment, we are being asked to really simplify this decision package ask to focus on simplifying access for level 1 special needs. So I don't anticipate that you will see a rate increase in that special needs package, but we are going to try and think about how we can simplify access for level 1 special needs. The two decision packages that you will for sure see from DCYF are related to some of the things I mentioned about the 12-month eligibility changes. So there are some technical corrections that we need to, updates that we need to do to really update the timing of the savings that were assumed to the 12-month eligibility instead of the 12-month authorization. And so one is about updating the timing of those savings, and then the second decision package will be around updating the expected savings. So really what that means is that by the time we can implement both of these changes, the amount of savings that the state had assumed is going to be a bit reduced. So we just need to go back and let the legislature know that and ask for that through the decision package process. So that is where we are at with decision packages. Melissa is going to talk a little bit about some agency request legislation that we have related to some reports. And as she talks about that, you'll see the timeline for our decision package asks in there. So I'm going to turn this over to Melissa.
Thank you, Nicole. And yes, we'll go over our DCYF legislative timeline. So beautiful morning, everyone. It's been a bit since I've been here. For those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Melissa Cheeseman, and I'm the Early Care and Education Government Affairs Policy Advisor within the Office of Public Affairs here at the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, DCYF. Today, I will be presenting a proposed piece of agency legislation, or ARL, that I'm currently working on with DCYF leadership and staff for submission in the fall. An ARL, or agency request legislation, is used when a state agency like DCYF would like to make changes to its authorizing statutes, also referred to as RCWs and/or laws. I'm really here today to gain your impressions and insights on the proposal, as this will help assist in the development. So you might be asking yourself right now, how will the feedback be used? And I think that's an excellent question. And I want to be really intentional about how that feedback is going to be used. The way I plan to use your feedback today, if you provide that, or whether today or via email, because you can contact me anytime, is it's basically a temperature gauge, right? Directionally shaping what the proposal can look like, as well as specific to my needs, understanding issues about what's being developed, as well as addressing them during the development. So keeping that in mind, things I would love to hear about, in addition to your thoughts, are specific questions about what I'm proposing, as well as whether you have concerns. So at times it will look like I'm not looking or speaking. I'm kind of looking away. I'll be taking notes. I'll also be working with the community engagement facilitators like Marlene to ensure that I've gotten everyone's feedback after the meeting today. So before going on, any questions? All right, so I can see we're already on slide 2. This slide should look familiar to a lot of you. This is DCYF's legislative cycle. If I can direct everyone's attention to the top left of the screen, there's a yellow circle. This is where we're at right now. We are currently developing decision packages and agency request legislation. This is what I would consider the developmental phase leading into the fall. During this time, DCYF staff, both program, budget, policy, are collaborating and working to develop these proposals, like the ones Nicole just presented, given our authorizing environment, as well as agency request legislation to either support those proposals and or in what I'm about to propose, supporting agency efficiency or government efficiency. DCYF is working on policy and funding changes for the second half of the current biennium, also supplemental requests or the supplemental budget year, given those same realities. During the developmental phase, the GA team or the government affairs team will be working with advisory groups, community advocates, program staff, legislators, staffers, just like here, to gauge the temperature, right, and inform the development of the proposal. Once the development and engagement is complete, others in the GA team, including myself, will complete the work around developing the proposed agency request legislation and working with budget team staff members to identify any type of cost estimates, if any. And in the case of this proposal, there are none at this time, and we don't perceive there to be any. And then the next step would be to obtain a legal review, or i.e. memo from the Attorney General's office, and then that would be submitted to the code reviser. All of this would be submitted to the code reviser for review to ensure proper format and applicable content is included. All of that must be completed before that final submission to OFM in the fall and for governor approval. Before moving on to the next screen, the last thing I want to say is the work that DCYF is grounded in, which is framed in its mission. Its mission is to protect children and strengthen families so they flourish. And the reason why I want to bring this up again, and I'll bring it up a lot of times, is this is foundational and the North Star to all of DCYF programs. And specific to the proposed agency request legislation, this proposal supports this mission by directing our attention to improving the quality of our practice through government efficiency. Currently, we are waiting for the governor to release their Washington State Strategic Plan, say that 5 times fast. It is coming out soon, which will also be used to shape and inform the development of this proposal. Next slide, please. Over the next couple of screens, I'm going to do an overview of the proposal and walk through the proposal parts. So this is titled the report efficacy proposal, i.e. being DCYF's report omnibus. And so for all of you who don't know what omnibus means, essentially this just means a bill that includes multiple sections of law, but generally have similar content involved. So what you're going to see here is multiple statutes in the proposal, but all of them being reporting requirements. And so the proposal
Melissa?
states, yes.
We got a
Margaret.
note from the interpreter if you could slow down a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like to talk and I talk fast. I come from a Tagalog background. So for all of you who don't know that, they also talk fast. So apologies and thank you for reminding me, Marlene, and anyone who's having a hard time understanding me. So this request, it seeks to remove and modify current reporting requirements in a 2-prong approach. The first is to remove non-substantive, duplicative, or burdensome reports to achieve greater operational efficiency with the goal of concentrating and improving DCYF's efforts to activities that directly relate to its core mission and activities. The second, and this is only in one instance so far, as this work is still in development, we will be requesting to modify a reporting requirement to better match data needs as well as gain greater operational efficiency. I'm going to pause here if there's any initial thoughts or questions about what I just presented, knowing that I still have a couple more slides to kind of help frame this discussion. Next slide, please. So this slide provides the terms, the specific terms used to identify reports that would be eligible for inclusion in the report efficacy, agency request legislation proposal, and request to OFM. These terms are defined here on the slide. I'm not going to go over them word for word, but essentially these terms are used to define, again, which reports will be marked for consideration for the agency request legislation. And so the request really is geared towards being technical in nature and non-substantive to DCY's operations. And the reason why I say that is because some of these reports do have data in them. That data doesn't go away, most of which is reported currently through dashboards and or the release of dashboards that are to come. So with that being said, if there aren't any questions, we're going to go ahead and move to the next slide, which is the actual proposals that affect early learning. So the top of the screen, the top left, I should say, are early learning. As you can see, there's a lot more there than just early learning. This is because this agency request legislation is really geared towards agency-wide reporting requirements, but the other ballast of reporting requirements are really namely child welfare and prevention. What you'll see here is on the left side of the slide is a list of statutory changes, and on the right, they are budget proviso reporting requirements, only one of which is early learning. Apologies, the second one is prevention. So as I go through these, if you have questions, please stop me. The first one is for early learning, specifically the statutory change is RCW 43.216.0896. This is early achievers. This proposal is still under construction. The requested information in this report is mostly through dashboards. So the terms that we're using that identify this as a qualifying report is duplicative, given DCYF's dashboards. And so more on this to come soon, but I'm going to go ahead and drop these dashboards in the chat as they're the same dashboards with one exception towards the end that I will be referring to throughout or through the remaining part of this presentation. The second one is RCW 43.216.0895, the cultural responsiveness. And we're only seeking to remove the reporting requirements, not the commitment. This is also still under construction. Essentially, the terms that identify this as qualifying is burdensome given the underlining or given the reductions in underlining and related funding as presented earlier by Nicole. For the data impacts related to this, this is one of the dashboards that I was talking about that is coming soon. Soon we're going to be having Fair Start for Kids dashboards. Essentially right now we're finishing up our internal review process, but more to come on that. And it should be, I'm pretty sure it's going to go through newsletters as well. So if that's wrong, please anybody correct me on the team. The last one on the left-hand side is RCW 43.216.0753, the Fair Start for Kids Act implementation reporting. Only that portion, again, related to the statute requirements for reporting. The terms that identify this as qualifying is burdensome with the delay in the Working Connections childcare expansion of eligibility, as well as ECAP entitlement, and the reductions in the related underlining funding. As far as data impacts, no, again, a lot of that data, much of it is already contained on dashboards. The final report on this slide to the right is a simple modification to the Quality Reporting and Improvement System, or QRIS. We'll be asking OFM to reduce the reporting from once a year to twice a year. I'm sorry, the other way around, from twice a year to once a year. And then also aligning the reporting to October. Currently, the proviso doesn't actually require a timeline, but wanting to make it very explicit helps DCYF in planning the workload. With that, I'm going to take a step back now and open the floor to any comments, questions, concerns, issues, thoughts.
Just to let you know, Melissa, this is where we have this session to end. So I don't know how many more slides you have.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay. That was a lot of information really fast. So if there's any questions out there, if you can raise your hand and we'll get those answered. If you want to take a look at what she presented today, there is the link in the chat to download the slides. I know being able to click on and look up every single code that you mentioned, to take some time to read through it and see
The
how it affects us.
PowerPoints, absolutely. The PowerPoints are hyperlinked for your convenience, to make that easy for reference.
Yeah.
Additionally, I do want to say it has been a tough implementation session. As all of you know, in addition to the normal workload of new implementation, there has been a whole host of reductions that have, I want to say, complicated and grown the workload that is normally around the implementation part of our legislative cycle. And so with that being said, just asking for grace around the timing of information being fed to you all, simply because it's an artifact of what has happened to this organization given this last session, and really wanting to also live into the reality of working with our partners, particularly you all and the remaining advisory groups that really help to inform this work. And so we're really trying to be very intentional about bringing this work to you all. We're still under development. I'm not going anywhere. My email, I'm going to drop in the chat here before too long, so that if you do have questions or comments, you can contact me directly. And thank you, Katie. I really appreciate that.
Again, it's, hearing all the codes, I know it kind of goes over our heads at times, and to be an appreciation of you knowing those codes and being able to reference them and explain quickly, what they mean. And it's very sad to see how much happened to our sector of early learning. I have kept up with it, and with the provider supports, we chat about it all the time. And it's hard to comprehend that we got such little. And between you and Nicole, thank you so much for offering the information and what you guys have presented. Again, click on those hyperlinks, get the presentation, and that will help you guys to, reference what both of you guys were talking about. Thank you so much for taking time today. All right, so Dane?
Yeah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just one quick thing, and this might be more for Travis and Debbie than Melissa and Nicole, but one of the other big pieces of legislation that concerned early learning this year, and I saw this note in here about providers need to know about their day-to-day business, was the work with the state fire marshal to basically uh, section off a larger building to just the spaces that are being licensed. And I think my uh, question is, how is that being communicated? How is DCYF working with the state fire marshal right now to be able to make sure that the change in that process is being smooth? And then how is that being communicated to licensors? So when initial license visits are not being held up by confusion from fire marshals. And we may not have a question of that right now, but I know that from a day-to-day business operation, that is going to be a pretty big change in some cases, where they're only looking at possibly one room and interpreting what the requirements will be for that room, rather than looking at a much larger overall building.
Dave, if I may ask, we're specifically talking about, I think 5509, is that the calculation capacity calculator?
Yep.
Yes. And I can, and I want to understand your question more specifically. You want to know about what BCYF is doing around comms or communications with, or in coordination with fire marshal?
Yep.
What the process is to streamline this and the communication for providers.
Yeah, I've had a couple of recent initial visits, and I can tell you right now that the fire marshals are, I know that I can't remember the date that the law actually goes into effect, but they are not close right now to, um, and they've said this out loud, of understanding what that change looks like. And so I'm just trying to understand that timeline, and because there are programs that may look to want to do that when that bill or when that law becomes law. And if they're not ready for it, there could be delays that would be unfortunate for programs.
Right. And I think this is a great question. I will make sure that we have a more full response for you. But as I facilitated the implementation of a few of these bills, I think right off the bat, their staff is currently so that you all can be abreast to what's happening right now as far as implementation. So currently, licensing staff is coordinating and developing government to government communications with with fire marshal authorities. But here's the problem, right? Is the problem really is for a lot of local jurisdictions, this is already how they've been doing it. Right. So I guess again, how does this change anything is a really great question. And then the second part of this is as far as the communication plans, yes, internally we are planning to make sure to disseminate as much as possible around this work to ensure that providers understand what's happening as well as how they're impacted by it.
Okay.
But thank you, Dave.
Do you know the date in which that law becomes law?
I'm going to grab my notes. So subject to change, I believe it is effective July 27th.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was the end of July as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, well, Dave, you ready to go into our next subject?
I sure am.
All
Thank you,
right.
Katie. So for our next group, and then just as a reminder, everybody, after this session is when we will have our break. And so we'll have our break here just around 11:30. But for the next hour, we are going to be spending time with Gretchen Starbrunig with the Workforce Supports Manager. And we're going to talk about the staff qualifications work group updates. So we'll provide an update on that work group that DCYF has been tasked with establishing as part of House Bill 1648, which helps improve qualification requirements in the verification process. Gretchen, take it away.
Sticky cursor. Thank you so much for that generous introduction. I am thrilled to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting us. This will be a monthly process, and so I am co-presenting today with Brett Skinner. As Dave mentioned, I am the Workforce Supports Manager. I joined DCYF in October of 2024, and I'm joining you today from the ancestral lands of the Duwamish and Muckleshoot and Coast Salish tribes. Brett, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Brett Skinner, and I'm the Child Care Policy Manager and lead for the rules process. And I've been in this role since around 2016. There's been some variations. I've worked in foster care and kind of weaved in and out of some different things. But had my head in childcare for a while, and I'm on Chinook and Cowlitz lands.
Great. Well, without further ado, we're going to kick things off. So, Brett and I are operating pretty informally. If you want to raise your hand, if you have a comment, feel free to do that. We're also going to be operating in the chat. So, if you have questions for our follow-up, please add them to the chat. And got a lot of support here from Marlene and others monitoring the chat. All right. So, today, like Nicole, I'm not going to read every slide to you. Today, we're going to give you a high-level overview. DCYF has been charged to implement this bill, this new law, which takes effect on July 27th. So we're going to give you a little brief background, and then Brett's going to share some of the steps we've used for outreach to seek provider interest. And then we're going to turn it over to you. We have a request for feedback on the selection criteria for the work group membership, and also requests for feedback on the workflow, how the decisions will be made, and then also what an ideal update presentation would look like to you. What elements would you like to hear on a monthly basis? Next slide, please. So there are two core elements to this bill. The first is that the bill extends the timeline for licensed childcare providers to demonstrate their completion of staff qualifications. They have multiple pathways to be able to do this, including community-based training, education, or experience-based competency. In practice, individuals currently employed in the roles of director, assistant director, program supervisor with at least 5 years of cumulative service and who meet all the health and safety requirements would be eligible to apply their experience to meeting staff qualifications. The second element of the bill is that it establishes a staff qualifications work group representative of individuals working in licensed centers and organizations. And we will get to this in the next slides. So the bill has several tasks outlined, specific tasks for the work group's response. It outlines measures to streamline and clarify requirements, meaning both communications and the rules and other ways that providers learn what they're required to do for pre-hiring and for their job role. Also, it requires DCYF to lead discussion and create options to offer PACE in an online format. So examples of questions could be, what would the work group recommend to create and adapt content for asynchronous online pre-recorded modules? What other recommendations would the work group make to ensure access to languages and language supports? All of these are essential to making this a feasible pathway and accessible in rural and remote areas. The third area is the verification, primarily in merit, of out-of-state education, training, and we're adding in employment. The concept behind the bill is that we're trying to broaden these pathways and make them more accessible. So the work group will be considering a review process for providers to submit resumes, training qualifications, and or letters from prior employers when confirming all of this in merit. And then just overall, we want to be ensuring that we have inclusive access and viable choices of pathways. Can providers easily find the information that they need to decide on which pathway they want to staff qualifications? What are the barriers? How could DCYF address them? How could DCYF best track the completion data against the baseline of this year when the bill passed? So we also want to know whether all choices are available to all populations, including certified tribal programs in all types of settings, roles, and other elements. Next slide, please. We've created a timeline working backward from the due date of the report to the legislature. The deadline for the report is December 1st, 2026. So the timeline shows you when the bill was signed and also the outreach that took place in June. which Brett will discuss further in the next part. We will be establishing the work group and designating the membership by the end of July. We'd ask for the interest form response due July 1st, so that gives us about a month to establish the work group. And then in August, we will have our first meeting. Next slide, please. There are many organizations listed in the bill that are specifically to be represented on the work group. So we will take several steps here to gain membership, representation from each of these organizations. First, we will draft and finalize an email invitation for outreach. In that email, we will outline the purpose of the work group and the representative's decision-making role, the voting capacity. We will talk about the logistics and the technical requirements, as these meetings will be available to the public and held virtually. Next, DCYF will connect with each of these entities to respond to any questions and to also ensure that we get a response with the contact information of their representative by the deadline. So then the designated organization makes their final decision on the work group representative and one alternate. And then finally, we will start the work group. We will have the work group making recommendations through a deliberation process, and there will be feedback loops, which we will get to in a moment. Next slide. I'm going to pass it over to Brett.
All right, thank you. So I kind of forgot to say this in the intro, but I always want to say it. I just want to thank everybody for showing up and doing the work that you do. It's really easy just caught up in business and asking for things and asking for feedback, but I always just want to continue to thank you for showing up, in your daily work and to show up to make these processes better. I just always want to pause and make sure we do that. So um, we're trying to do our best to have this selection process be equitable, and that we try to make a process that meets the intent of what the bill's asking, and try to get as many voices as possible. So we're gonna kind of talk about that. As you can see on the screen, the work group interest responses, 55 individuals indicated their interest, and so you can kind of see where we received the interest and kind of some pie pieces in terms of where that came from. So we had 10 family home childcare providers with multiple primary languages, 5 English speaking, 4 Spanish speaking, and 1 Somali speaking. And then on the right-hand side, you can kind of see the license type. And then you can also see the number of childcare providers by type. So it kind of gives you a sense of the number of licensed childcare facilities, and then the dynamics within that, right? Because a center might have way more capacity, way more children than a small family home. So we wanted to kind of like let everybody see kind of what it looks like from a scaled out view. So we can go to the next slide. So we also wanted to think about the diversity that we have in terms of regions. So we don't want to just have this all concentrated from one area of the state and miss the value that is in all parts of the state. And so in terms of the responses, You can see where we had a high level, and you can kind of see the representation from each part. So we'll kind of use this information um, to help to do this, but we just wanted to you to have an idea of who had turned in information so far. So we can go to the next one. This one kind of goes into the type of interest. So 89% of the responses came from individuals in leadership roles, including CEOs, executive directors of organizations. There's also parent, coach lead, and a manager support. Um, and then this is just kind of, some commentary on where they were coming from. I'd love to sit on a panel. Staff qualifications have been a huge barrier for us in finding qualified staff in the Vancouver area. So it gives you a sense of who is interested and what they're interested in. So we're taking a look at all of the varying factors that are involved here. We can go to the next slide. If you clean up. Just you're stuck in the sleepover. Okay, so a part of this is we're trying to figure out a way to make this equitable to try to select this. And so there's been some ideas put forth in terms of how we're gonna do this, but we also wanted to get your feedback from the group to make sure that we're not making a decision that doesn't feel fair. And so that's why we're here. So as you can see on screen, we're gonna have 10 providers in addition to the external organizations mandated by the bill. So Gretchen had that list of group that was all written into the bill that we need to select based on that group. And then we'll have 10 providers as well as those. And so here's some of the pieces we were looking at, trying to have one from each DCF region, no more than one representative from the same organization, priority to individuals not currently serving on other advisory boards, priority to who serve and belong to linguistically and culturally diverse communities, and then priority to providers and facilities with greater license capacity. Um, so one of the initial thoughts is this isn't on the screen here, but I'm just going to read it out loud as a potential jumping off point. Based on kind of all the factors that we've seen in terms of capacity, the way in which we got interest from the interest form so far, but from this group of 10, we were looking at doing 3 family home providers, 1 school age provider, 1 certified tribal program, and 1 certified for payment only tribal program, and then 4 childcare centers. And so that was at least a number that we were looking at, trying to factor in the sizes of centers, a lot of these factors that we've shown on the screen. And then we have some considerations that we're going to be working with when we work with our tribal members. And so we are going to be working with them to make sure that we have connection with those groups and get their recommendations as well.
Hey Brett, there's just a quick question in there too.
Yeah.
When the selections are ultimately made, how would those folks be contacted?
Gretchen, do you want to cover that? Is that what you were kind of talking about in the last slide or a couple slides back?
Yeah, we're going to use multiple methods. We're going to send an email, but we'll also phone.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for the reminder. It was just sitting in the chat and I didn't know if it was before or after you had covered that.
And if there are other methods of communication, we are very open.
Okay, so we can go to the next slide. We're gonna in a little bit, we're going to kind of talk, Gretchen's going to kind of talk about what will be happening in the groups, but we did want to, open it up for feedback in terms of feedback that you want to say out loud or put in the chat right now, or if you have feedback that as you process this through the rest of the day, um, we are governed by certain timelines, and so we can't take sort of forever. We'll have to make a decision at some point. But if you have suggestions, we're definitely open to kind of hearing those and trying to weigh out the best solution. Um, but please, if you have questions or feedback, please share that. We want to make sure that this is community informed, that this is inclusive, that we're weighing the options, that we're thinking about things. And we also want to acknowledge we don't always have the perfect solutions. We're just like everybody else. We're doing our best with trying to make this equitable. But I know that it's not always going to be perfect for folks.
Question in the
And
chat, did I hear right that 10 providers will be in this work group?
so there'll be 10 providers, and then there's also 10 more organizations, which I think it's organizations/providers that are mandated by the bill. So it will be at least the 20, is my understanding.
Have the 10 that were mandated already been selected?
Gretchen,
No,
do you want
we
to go
have
into that?
not. Yeah, we have not yet sent the invitations. We were waiting to talk with you first and get your ideas on representation before we send the email invitation.
Okay.
But that email will come out within the next week or two, as we need to it will come out within the next week. So thank you for
Couple other
asking.
Yeah, no problem. The next question is there any emphasis on a representative that shows up with more? Oh, sorry, we had a big comment come in there that got in my way there. That shows up with more than one qualification, such as an organization and a provider.
That's an excellent question. I appreciate that. I hope it's in the chat so we can follow up. This is exactly the kind of
It
input.
is in the chat. Yep.
Excellent. Thanks.
The next question is,
Gretchen, I'm sorry,
oh, sorry.
may I just real quickly? I
Please.
mean, I get Gretchen, thank you so much. So around the requirements for membership, the law is really straightforward. And yes, there could be a nexus between being a provider and being a representative. And I think that is an important thing to consider. But when thinking about, I think all of that, what's really important for DCYF is to meet the letter of the law at a minimum, which what we're proposing in this presentation does meet the minimum of the law. The next step, what Gretchen and Brett have been really excellently have been excellently communicating, is we want to go above the law and live into the feedback that we've already been getting from all of you around participation within the work group. There will also be, I think later on in the presentation, how provider supports fits into the entire process as well as ELAC. Again, because we've heard the feedback, again, we are trying to meet the letter of the law as well as lift up the work that we live into intentionally, recognizing that we have to do this all within existing resources. Is the last part I want to say about that is there's so much more we would love to do. But again, recognizing the presentation Nicole just did on the implementation of the reductions, as well as knowing that this bill was given to us within existing resources and it's work that we have to do and want to do. I'm going to stop right there.
So the next thought, thanks, Melissa. The next thought, Brett and Gretchen, was, will there be alternates for the 10 providers?
That's a really good point. There will definitely be alternates for the organizations, but it'll be one vote.
Okay. Our next comment, and then Gloria, I will come to you in a moment. This comment from Jacqueline says, uh, I would hope that you would consider providers, uh, their studies, their learning, their years of work, and above all, their development and capabilities in childcare when choosing the providers. She does have a specific person that she put in here that I'll let you see in the chat. That just has a lot of knowledge, established foundations of care. And so I think that's one that you guys can look at later for kind of a specific person. Julie says the application is closed. I saw there was only one provider that applied for my region. So does that mean that that person is automatically in the work group?
Excellent question. I love the consideration. Thank you. This is exactly what I was hoping for. So thank you.
And then Gloria, can you unmute and ask your question before these guys move on to their
Sí,
next slide?
claro que sí, voy a hablar en español, no sé si me escucha el intérprete. Sí, mire, a mí me gustaría que como se va a hablar acerca de las calificaciones del personal, que hubiera un porcentaje más alto de proveedores, porque a veces, y lo digo con mucho respeto, hay organizaciones que son invitadas a tomar decisiones que nos benefician o nos afectan a nosotros, pero siempre la voz de nosotros es muy poca y me gustaría que nosotros los proveedores de cuidado infantil tuviéramos más participación para nosotros también opinar, porque esto va a venir a beneficiarnos a nosotros y a veces nos imponen cosas que hay algunas agencias, no voy a decir todas, y lo digo con mucho respeto, que ni siquiera saben cuál es un día diario de un proveedor acá y se ponen a exigir cosas, desconocen nuestro trabajo, entonces sí tiene que haber gente envuelta en el conocimiento de lo que nosotros hacemos y en base de eso opinar acerca de lo que nosotros debemos de tener. No es lo mismo opinar desde allá en un escritorio a estar trabajando acá con 12 niños, cubriendo muchos aspectos, pero sí me gustaría que hubiera más voz de proveedores que de organizaciones. También las organizaciones son importantes, pero que conozcan el trabajo que nosotros estamos desempeñando. Esa es mi opinión personal.
Thanks, Gloria. And then Gretchen and folks, you guys will see additional kind of recommendations of people in the chat that you guys can take back following the meeting as well. So I think we've cleared the chat at this point if you want to continue on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you could move to the next slide, please. This is the section where we're going to be asking for your feedback on the decision-making process. So be listening and preparing your comments. So we have created a flow chart as the beginning, the skeletal process of creating a work plan. And as part of the flow chart, we have created this proposed decision-making. The next slide will be the feedback loop. So the first part is that we would create, and this is going to be part of the welcome packet after the members are selected, a framework and the guiding questions. And the agenda for each work group meeting would focus on a topic staged to respond to the questions in the bill. The work group will recommend strategies to answer those guiding questions. And then after the work group meeting, DCYF staff will summarize the approved recommendations and send the summary to the advisory groups, this group and to IPEL. Each advisory group will review the recommendations and share their thoughts. And then ELAC will coordinate the feedback from provider support before sending it on to DCYF. Then DCYF will summarize the feedback for the work group and and the advice from the advisory groups for leadership and the work group. Leadership will review in light of the DCYF operating principles, and then the DCYF Executive Steering Committee would communicate about the decisions on these approved recommendations. The close of this process starts the feedback loop. So if you could hold your thoughts until the end of the next slide. So this is how the decisions would be made. Next slide, please. So after the decision is made, then there's a second process. And so the staff would prepare for the feedback loop, tracking and reporting. There will be a specified form indicated by the beautiful little icon. Thank you, Melissa, for helping to create this flow chart. It's really working for me. Then there will be a trusted messenger who delivers the prepared decision at IPEL and ELAC provider support meetings. Each of the advisories would collect their thoughts and impressions, and then all of that trusted messengers would communicate it back to the steering committee, to DCYF steering committee. Leadership would review the entire package and make their final decision. All right, so now it is your turn. Not quite, almost. Next slide, please. I just want to note that Early Learning Division and licensing are doing this. We're kind of in lockstep, like, you know, cross-country skiing. We're back and forth. So we will be co-presenting at each of these meetings, but I wanted to share kind of internally how we've organized things at DCYF. So the first part is the core team. These are the worker bees. We meet weekly for half an hour at least, and it is comprised of DCYF from staff from several divisions, includes communications, includes Melissa from government affairs, our community engagement team, to help us lift up and out the work plan and to implement the work plan. We will be monitoring status. We will course correct when needed. And we will keep the DCYF leadership informed of the status. The next team is the internal staff quals team. This is also DCYF staff, specialists, and subject matter experts. This group it includes 7 representatives from licensing, 2 from governmental affairs, 3 from communications, 2 from Office of Tribal Relations, and depending on the topic, about 8 to 10 from Early Learning Division. This group meets monthly or every other week, depending on the urgency of the topics, and it will be focusing on external and internal communication. It will be focusing on data, specifically on how merit reflects experience, education, and training, and also tracking progress towards the workforce's compliance with one of the several pathways by 2030. The third part of this group will be to discuss the rules, which Brett is leading that part of the work. And then the last part is the 1648 work group, and this will be representatives of early learning and school age workforce, which we've described already. They will review recommendations, deliberate, vote as to which ones move forward for the advisory feedback and DCYF leadership. And the work group will meet every other month. The first meeting will take place August 2025, coming right up. And the work group will close in October of 2026. All the details will be in the invitation. Okay, now we would like to hear a little bit from you. I want to thank you for listening. And this is a time to offer any feedback on the decision-making loop. Dave, thanks for taking it.
Yeah, no problem. If anybody wants to raise their hand, if they have any questions. Gretchen, I do have one question as we're waiting for others to do this too. This bill obviously had the two parts, and you highlighted that in the very first slide. I think my question is, and Melissa was very kind to know this before, but what time, or what is the date in which it goes into place? I know that the great work of the work group is going to be happening, but at the same time, the extension of the education or whatever it is starts. And I am concerned that that will not match uh, merit when that becomes law. And so I'm a little concerned about the inconsistencies of what we might experience with the licensors when they may see what appears to be a compliance issue, but it really isn't because of the extension of the law and how that's getting communicated out to the licensors. And I got hands from Melissa and Nicole, so I'll let you guys choose who goes first. You're muted, Melissa, if you're talking.
I was just saying Nicole gets to go first.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Yeah, and then I'll turn to our licensing colleagues as well. So I think there's a couple of things happening here, as you noted, Dave. So one, we really wanted to get the process related to the work group started, which really is about kind of what happens in the future in some respects, right? Like after we think about the timeline extension and those pieces. Two, simultaneously, there is thought about how do we work on building out merit to accurately reflect the updated dates and timelines, because we know that that needs to go in there. We feel like there's a little bit more time on that, just trying to think about phasing and sequencing. Because that date has been pushed out until 2030. But what I hear I think in your question also is what's the communication that's going out to all of our partners, licensors, etc., about that extension of timeline while we get the build in merit. Is that a fair statement?
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for making that more clear than what I said.
So we can, you were very clear. So I know that the team has been working on is the project charter and making sure we know sort of what's in scope and out of scope and phasing and timeline. And I can bet that there's some communication pieces in there about going out to licensors and such. And so if useful, we can make sure that this group knows when that communication has occurred and what is in there.
Yeah, that would be great. What is the date that this becomes law? Melissa, do you know that one?
I do. And it's a mixed bag because as
Okay.
far as effective dates are concerned, action or burden of any one party as to the change in laws, I want to say that the bill becomes effective July 27, 2025. The extension of meeting the quals moves from August 1st, 2030, which means that the law changes around around proving staff qualifications right through merit. You now have that, it begins July 2027. So the current law is still in place until then. And then that extension. Finally, I think what some conversations we've had internally around compliance with the law and meeting the lift around these deadlines or effective dates is that essentially what the ask is here. Remember going back to the comment I made earlier on in this conversation around within resources, within existing resources, right? The intent around this is to work together to create recommendations that effectively will feed a report. Our thought process is things that we can do within resources now can be quick wins through implementation and communicated through the report. Other things that cost money or create a different lift or policy change can also be communicated through this report. Again, that is essentially the lift here in the short term as we look towards how we can use this as a vehicle for future DPs as well as improving our practice.
All right, I'm looking to see if others have hand raises. There was a comment from one of our participants today that says that there's hope that there's an opportunity to open the application again. I think that maybe there is someone that they either themselves or someone that they were thinking about that maybe didn't have the opportunity to fill it out. I'm just reading that out loud. I know that the timelines were in place because of needing to start to move this process forward, but I just wanted to put that out there that there are folks that maybe people are suggesting would be really great to be a part of this that did not at the time due to a variety of factors actually fill out the form. So Melissa, I don't know if your hand is raised because of that comment or if it was from before. Go ahead.
I am, and this is definitely a staff policy call on next steps, so I'm not going to answer that. I think what I want to bring into consideration is the timeline here. As taking more steps now, again, Brett has already alluded to this. This has already been talked about also in Matt's. There's a lengthy internal vetting for reports at DCYF. And again, there's reasons, one, wanting to ensure that we are doing the cross-functional work to make sure that what's putting out into ether, right, is what needs to be said and is in alignment with DCYF, as well as taking the time that Gretchen did an excellent job communicating the feedback loop. Again, that's above the statutory requirement. This is us, DCYF, living into our partnership with you all. So with that all in mind, the reporting on this is December 1st, 2026. And I know that sounds like, oh, that's next year. But that's a slip that it slips by super fast. And we still need to have these discussions and feedback loops to incorporate everyone's feedback before decisions are finally made. And that means that this report, this draft, needs to be uploaded into our system as early as the beginning of October of that same year. So when you think about that now, from now between then, essentially we have less than a year and a half to get these recommendations in front of leaders, as well as start drafting the implementation plan report and then feeding our process. So just when we're thinking about the feedback, recognizing that there is a timeline is helpful in informing our planning processes, as well as helping us lift. So I'm going to stop now and let Gretchen take lead as far as what next steps are for individuals, as well as that want to participate.
I really appreciate this. I was looking at Nicole's eyes. Nicole, did you want to say something?
I think part of what I was just going to say is, I think part of what we're trying, you're watching us navigate is how do we balance the work group, our multiple advisory groups, and really think about how we can support, Gretchen and team really used the term trusted messengers before, and how do we have some of this, I think, communication and feedback loops in between groups. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And I think that it is challenging when we think about, I'm sure everyone wants to participate in some way, shape, or form. And so I think if we could really get your feedback on, does the feedback loop process seem right around, there's going to be some work group pieces, there are going to be pieces that come to IPEL, provider supports and ELAC and back to the work group. I think that would be helpful. And I also just want to appreciate the rich questions and considerations that have come up that I know the team is going to want to go back and take a look at as well. And so I know sometimes it's not always satisfying when there's not a direct answer in the moment. I think you've given us a lot to consider and think about, and we want to be thoughtful as we take that back.
Does anybody else have any comments that they would like to make? Either raise your hand or continue to put those comments in the chat. I know that those are all going to be captured as well. So, um,
Well, one thing that I just wanted to say, just to put emphasis, Nicole touched on it, and Gretchen, no, sorry, and Gretchen was kind of explaining it. But I know when the information is first coming out, it's kind of like, what is all this information? And it's very easy, even when I'm looking at it, to kind of gloss over it. But the way that this is built out, it's going to be iterative, meaning we're going to have a meeting. We're gonna talk about like a bite of things, a section of things, and then we're gonna bring that back to this group. And this group is can push on it, can can say what they want, can bring new things to that, and then that will be brought back into the fold. And so it's not going to be everything's decided and then you see it at some point. There's going to be opportunities to sort of raise questions or say to bring stuff. And so that's what I like about it. I don't think anyone's going to be left off if you're not a part of that group. Um, and sometimes it can be, I've worked in some big groups and it can get really challenging when everybody wants to kind of have space for their voice, but only one person can kind of be talking. And so it is a tough balance, but I do appreciate what everybody's saying, and we will take a look at this. And in terms of this whack, um, the Dave, your question around the timeline for 2026, like Melissa was saying, we are going to change that whack. That whack won't change at the end of July, but this is a law now, and so it's going to be true. And the reason we didn't change the put in an emergency whack is because the deadline isn't until August of 2026. And so we know we'll be able to change the whack before then. And so I just wanted to make that clear that that change will happen. Nothing will change on that. That date is changing. And then the work group will work on things beyond that, work on other changes.
yeah, my question was just more specifically about what has the communication been like to the licensors? So we're not spending time in monitoring visits, having negotiations with them about what actually is
Got it.
current and not. Because that's unfortunately a time sometimes we have to spend time doing those types of things. And I'm just
Makes sense.
trying to avoid that. Thank you for saying that too. It's going to be great to be able to have this be a conversation at each one of these meetings. I think that'll create some really robust discussion, and it'll be cool to be able to track the work of the group as it's continuing on over the course of this time frame. So that's great.
So I want to thank all of you again. I'm going to echo Brett for showing up today. We really need you. We need your feedback. One last seed I'd like to plant is what would you like to hear about from us as we come here monthly? I'm guessing it's going to be updates on all elements of the work, but if there's a different format that you would like, please let us know. We don't want this to be top-down, solid presentation all the time. So let us know. And thank you.
Jessica, I think we'd be good to put the Menti up for this section, and just what Gretchen was saying too, if you have thoughts, and I think this one might be, I don't know if it's possible to maybe even keep this one up over the course of the break, because I know that there is people may have some thoughts that would be really helpful as Brett and Gretchen and the rest of the team are going back and continuing to look at this piece as the invitations for the work group start to go out. But Brett and Gretchen, and Melissa and Nicole and others that participated in this conversation, really appreciate your time and thoughts as we advance towards this really important new phase. So it's exciting. So let's keep that up. We're gonna have our break coming up here in a minute from 11:30 until 11:45. And then just as a reminder, we do have two really good topics coming up after the break. First, we're going to have an early learning and licensing presentation on childcare check. That'll be at 11:45 coming right out of the break. And then at 12:45, we have a pre-licensing presentation. So two really important topics for us for the rest of the day. So I hope that people can continue to participate and be a part of this meeting today. So let's take our break now. We'll keep the Menti up if possible, and then we will be back at 11:45 to keep going with the meeting today.
Okay, we're back. Good deal. We are ready to move on to the next topic, which is, let's see, the early learning and licensing presentation. We have Matt Judge again. He is our Federal Initiatives and Collaboration Administrator. And Michelle Stimpilo, the Washington Compass Product Owner, who will provide an overview of federally mandated reporting requirements for Child Care Check, including examples of inspection reports through the platform. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for having me. So what we're going to do today is kind of have two major sections. First, I'm going to discuss the Child Care and Development Fund consumer education requirements as they relate to our Child Care Check website. And then licensing staff will take a look deeper into Child Care Check and some of the inspection report information that's displayed there. So you get a sense of the framework for complying with the federal requirements and some of the work we're doing to address a couple compliance issues. And then we can get into some discussion later. So just to provide the overview, Child Care and Development Fund, or CCDF, is the federal grant that pays for subsidies in Washington State and across the nation. And in order to receive the grant, all the states have to comply with the requirements of it in the Code of Federal Regulations. This one I've cited here on this slide covers all of consumer education. And the major requirement here is that states need to have a list for parents and families to take a look at so they can learn about early care and education programs that are available locally, their record as to health and safety and inspections and monitoring, in addition to the child ages that they serve, their program offerings. It's also, optional to include information about quality recognition and improvement systems and things of that nature. So today we're just going to focus on the portion of the CCDF requirements around what we're required to display as to licensing activity, inspections, monitoring, and health and safety requirements. Another way that we meet the consumer education requirements as to a list of providers available to the public is through Child Care Aware's family portal. But today we'll just focus on these components on Child Care Check that are kind of the other half of complying with the requirements to have a consumer education website about providers. So here at this federal rule, you can look up that citation, or I'll provide a link to it actually in the chat so you can take a look at the full language. But to paraphrase, it's requiring that states post on their website the full monitoring and inspection reports for all licensed providers. And that's listing, it's got to list all the areas of compliance and non-compliance with the state's health and safety requirements, which need to conform to the 11 health and safety areas of the Child Care and Development Fund grant requirements. The rule here also requires that we provide information on that site around corrective action taken by the state and provider when there is an issue of non-compliance with one of the state's licensing health and safety requirements. And so we're required to post any health and safety violations, also injuries and fatalities, and we have to prominently display those. And they need to be in, either plain language or have a plain language summary accompanying the full reports.
Matt,
yeah,
do you think you could slow down a little bit for our interpreters?
sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for the reminder. And we are required to have these results up on Child Care Check for going back 3 years at a minimum to comply with the federal requirements. So next slide, please. So this slide is really to illustrate a couple of things. All states across the nation, or almost every single state, has some issue where they're not fully compliant with all the requirements of Child Care and Development Fund. And we're all usually in an ongoing process of making sure we address those issues. One of the ways that Administration for Children and Families that oversees the CCDF grant determines that there's a compliance issue and works with states to address it is through on-site monitoring. This began our first monitoring, on-site monitoring in Washington State was in 2021. Then we had another monitoring spring of 2024 here, just over a year ago. So this slide is illustrating that DCYF does have a couple of compliance issues specifically with regard to the content that we're posting on Child Care Check. And this illustrates that how seriously the grantor takes this. But there's also content here that I think speaks to information that providers might like being posted here that DCYF should be doing more of. And that the grantor finds us out of compliance with as well. So we're working to come into compliance with all of these issues here. So first bullet here. During the pandemic, it was a struggle in terms of capacity and licensing to achieve 100% compliance with the requirement to inspect all providers. And so when Administration for Children and Families came out for their on-site monitoring, they did note the compliance issue and gave us a finding because we don't have the reports from the inspections that weren't able to happen during that time. So licensing has been working really hard to leverage all of our capacity at DCYF to make sure we get into compliance by doing all inspections. These reports here also have to have all the complaints we receive on licensing issues. But they noticed, or Administration for Children and Families issued a finding that there are some instances where there's no information about the reason for a complaint included in the inspection reports that are on Child Care Check. And then they noticed that sometimes if there's an injury or, well, we haven't had fatalities recently, but if there's an injury and no licensing rules are violated, there won't be any information regarding the incident posted to Child Care Check. And this one just kind of illustrates that they're sticklers for there needs to be information about an injury or fatality, regardless of whether there was no licensing rule even violated that was even related to the incident. So this means that we have to be posting all of the licensing compliance issues, any injuries or fatalities, and all of the complaints received to this site. And then the fourth bullet here, they noticed that there were instances in some of the cases where if a provider was found to be out of compliance with a licensing rule, there's no information about corrective action taken between the state and the provider to resolve that issue. And this one's here specifically because that seems like information based on comments we've received from this group in the past that y'all might be interested to see on Child Care Check, how providers doing hard work come back into compliance where an issue is noted and we work together to resolve it. So those are some of the things that we're working with Administration for Children and Families on to come into compliance with their requirements. And in the last slide here, this is my last slide. Just giving some information about our process for coming into compliance with some of these findings. So the major focus is, of course, addressing the 3 years of reports needing to be posted. And the principal way of doing that is by achieving 100% compliance with the requirement to do inspections. We're required to do an annual inspection unannounced every year for providers. We also formed an internal work group, which we convened twice to discuss the compliance findings and explore approaches on some of the other topics I mentioned a slide ago. And so we're beginning work and planning to propose a compliance solution package for ACF to review in the fall. The idea there is that we show them our best thinking, see what their response is in terms of whether they think our proposed solutions bring us into compliance, and then move on from there and make any changes necessary to get compliant. So when it comes to changes to Child Care Check, I think just the high level boundary around doing that work is just the fact that all of the DCYF capacity and licensing needs to be focused on 100% compliance with inspections. And so that means that we're trying to do is work as efficiently as possible around coming into compliance with the other topics. And I guess what that suggests is that the approach at this point wouldn't be radical departures from what's available on Child Care Check to get into compliance with those requirements, but certainly need to make some moves to come into compliance based on the findings. And that might be a good segue into discussion of Child Care Check properly. So that might be the end of my piece here, but I'll just pause if there are any questions that have come up.
Oh, yeah, I asked a couple questions in the chat, and then there were some that need interpretation, it looks like.
No, those were answered. Yeah, so they've been taken care of.
So
Yeah.
sometimes things that are listed are just related to one item. And so I think providers have been, concerned, obviously, about the insurance companies that have been reading information on Child Care Check, and lots of people have gotten canceled. Their insurance companies have dropped them, and they've said, we read the inspection reports on the website, and it looks lengthier than it sometimes should look, in my opinion. When you've just got one item, in my example on there is if a staff member is out of, like their bloodborne pathogen needs to be renewed, you might get written up on that, but it might relate to 3, 4 different WACs, and all of those get written up rather than writing up one staff member needs to, whatever the language is in a couple of sentences, or even the language from one WAC, and then saying it's related to, this violation is also related to these other WACs. It's still the same issue. So I'm not sure, I think providers are confused why it has to include all the language.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We've been discussing that internally. I'm gonna leave it to licensing folks to cover that territory because I think we've got some good things to say about that.
Oh, good. Dave, did you want to jump in?
I was just actually making sure that because you were hosting this session, that you were going to ask the question that you posted. But I did want to follow up with your second comment, which is the providers used to write their responses. And I know Matt had talked about that at the end, about kind of a way to be able to show that we've been in compliance. I will say, just because of the benefit of being in a variety of geographic regions and having so many programs, that there's not consistency from the licensors about how they want to see things fixed. It's actually all over the board. So I would say if there was a place to be able to build process, that would be one of them. To say, I came here, here was this violation. I want, I want it by email, I want a picture, I want whatever it is. But I'd love for us to be able to show that because most of these things can get fixed in 5 or 10 minutes. You fix it, you show it, and then that can be documented some way, but that's not being communicated consistently across the board from licensors about how uh, providers are supposed to show that they fix something. I get emails all the time from my different programs that say, here's my monitoring report. And then I come back to them and say, okay, well, did they say anything about how they want you to see that fixed? And I get a variety of different answers. So somehow there isn't a process doesn't exist across the board. And if it does, the communication is not to a point where it's actually being followed consistently, where we as providers can then show that we have fixed whatever that issue might be.
Dave, if
Yeah,
I
no-
could just ask, it almost sounds like, and I don't think you're intending this, but it sounds almost like there's flexibility in how a provider could show that they've taken care of it. And I don't think that's what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that let's say that there was a cord that was needed to be wrapped up or whatever.
Mhm.
At one place, they'll get an indication that somebody will say, please send me a picture of this and show me that you fixed it. Somebody else will say, I just don't want to see this when I come back next year. Somebody else will say, so what I'm saying is that it doesn't feel like there is an actual process when licensors are asking people to show how the things are being fixed. And if there is a process, it's not being followed consistently. And I see Travis has his hand, so he probably has a good answer to this, but that's what I got.
I don't know if I have a good answer. I have an answer to it.
I like it. I like it.
So it's some of it has to do based on the risk of the item that is out of compliance, right? And so and first off, a lot of the stuff that you're saying today is in the hopper for us to fix, right? So what you're
Excellent.
saying is and in fact, even this situation is going to be fixed a little bit over the next year. So Julie brought up an issue with just consistency, right? All together. We're gonna work on that. We're actually looking at our WACs and our checklists right now to see how we can dial it down and really get to the health and safety. But I don't want to hijack this. There's more to come on that. But yes, I hear what you're saying, Dave, with the consistency piece of how to respond to those out of compliance issues. Okay.
So Travis, do you have anything to add to my previous comment about wax being listed multiple times just for one item? Because I know that we thought Matt would have, but that sounds like your thing.
We're
Debbie.
Yeah, it's ours. We're working on it.
Well,
What
and
can you tell us?
actually, Julie, that's part of some of what Michelle's going to show us in just a few minutes.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Okay, so looking at the chat, I did see, okay, it looks like Marlene's handling all that. And then Aaron said if I could piggyback on Julie's questions, in some cases, licensors list all items under the observation or non-compliant section of the inspection report, including items that were provided as technical assistance. This can feel punitive. They're listing technical assistance on there? Okay.
Sorry, Julie. Yes, in some cases, the licensor will list all observations, so everything they've seen. And then technical assistance falls off, of course, but since it was listed under a item that was cited, it stays in there and stays visible for families to see, which makes it challenging in some cases when you're, when like you're saying, when you're trying to show a good child care check report and in good faith, you've got received technical assistance. It's very challenging when families can then go in and see those items listed there.
Yeah,
And that's something that we're gonna talk about here in just a couple minutes.
great. Dee had a comment about the timeline for how you're going to be. So yeah, let's just move along then, since we're going to be getting some answers. Thank you.
Okay. So I am actually going to go off of the PowerPoint and go live so that I can show you all real version. So let me see if I can share my screen here for you all. And hopefully everyone can see my screen. I have a copy of kind of the beginning portions of an inspection report.
We can see that.
Okay, awesome. So for anyone that doesn't know, my name is Michelle Sampilo. So happy to be here. And I'm the product owner for Walk Compass, which is the system that licensing staff use to manage licenses. And it's also the system that providers use to access the provider portal. And it also is the system that basically displays childcare check. So what I wanted to go over with you today is just kind of sharing a quick overview of some updates that are coming at the end of the month to the licensing inspection report, which is posted on Childcare Check and is what you all are talking about with those WACs that were cited out of compliance, as well as the observations from the licensor on what they saw. So the changes that we have are they're meant to make the report easier for providers, for the public, basically for everyone to understand, especially as it relates to the licensor's observations. So right now, when you receive an inspection report, it includes basic information like the date and the type of inspection, as well as the licensor's details. So I've kind of got a copy pulled up here. It also has definitions of some of our key terms that we are using, like compliance action or enforcement action, first time violation, things like that. It also has an explanation of kind of the dispute process, what you need to do if you don't agree with an item. And it also risks, like Travis was talking about, the risk levels. So you kind of know if something was cited, what the timeline is for the correction. Does it have to be immediate? Is it one of those ones where it's 5 business days or something like that? So those risk levels provide that deadline for fixing the items. Currently, right now, when a licensor when a licensor notes several issues that are out of compliance under the same regulation section. So I'm using the training requirements section as an example, just because that's kind of one that probably is seen a lot. Maybe you've got staff members that didn't take safe sleeping or have expired CPR or first aid. Those all fall under the umbrella of training requirements. So if you have a couple of staff that maybe one didn't have safe sleep training and one had an expired CPR card, that those observations right now get grouped together. And that's kind of what I think it was, I forget who mentioned that. but that Aaron mentioned that they're kind of grouped together, and that's where you can kind of get sometimes those technical assistance pieces, those observations being listed, because in our system, those observations get grouped together, and it kind of looks like what I have pulled up right here. So right now there's one WAC, one regulation that was cited, but you can see here, there are 3 different observations here for different types of training, and these do not all relate to this regulation, which was about the childcare basics. Only one of these observations relates to a staff missing or having not completed childcare basics. So that's how the report kind of works right now. And so it is hard to read. It does show up weird things if, you know, some of these fall off into technical assistance. So you've got things showing that really you don't want to. It also causes problems when providers want to dispute. Then if something comes off, you might still have an observation on there for a regulation that got removed just because it was grouped together in this grouping of regulations. So what we're doing to fix this, so this is kind of what it looks like in the old way with the grouped observations here. So you can see this is just like what Aaron mentioned, the technical assistance. We've got one of our WACs went to technical assistance, and here you've got the same 3 observations listed. So it just duplicated them like 3 separate times. So it's not great the way it is right now. So what we're doing is this is what the new regulation or the new report's going to look like. It's very much the same. It's still going to have the same basic information, the same definitions, information about the risk levels. But what you'll notice on here is those same regulations, those same WACs that were cited for the training requirements, now you've got a single observation for each one. So this was the regulation about childcare basics, a staff member not having childcare basics. Well, now you've got a single observation for that regulation. It's not grouping those notes together. So it'll have one clear observation, its own specific observation for each regulation instead of having multiple. And so we're also doing, if there's issues that were fixed during the visit, that will be clearly identified on, staff will have the ability to mark that while they're out on site, that they, you know, an item was corrected on site. And so when the inspection report is generated, it will mark here that an item was corrected on site. Sorry, it highlighted everything, but you can see this check mark here for corrected on site. So it will have that. So hopefully that will help a little bit with that, that piece to show, hey, was an item corrected while we were there doing our inspection visit. I also want to kind of call out that there are 2 versions of the inspection report. There's the one that's sent directly to providers, and it includes all non-compliance items. So it's the one that I have pulled up right now. So you'll see the items that are listed under non-compliances and also the items that are listed under technical assistance, which those are those first-time forgiveness items. So those are ones that kind of, it's the first time that they were cited and they're eligible for first-time forgiveness. Then there's a version that gets posted to Child Care Check. And that version does not include, this is the version that I'm pulling up here. This is the same inspection, like same copy of the inspection report that I just had pulled up, but this is what gets posted to Child Care Check. It doesn't include the items marked as first-time forgiveness. So anything that was under that technical assistance section. So that gets removed. So the public parents, they don't see anything that fell under that first-time forgiveness section. And also we remove any signatures from what gets posted on Child Care Check to protect privacy stuff. And you all are no longer required to sign it, but our licensors still do. So we make sure we don't post any signatures on there. But that is what kind of some of the changes that we have happening with the inspection reports that should help with that duplication of observations and kind of citing multiple things. And that information will translate over into what's being displayed and posted on Child Care Check for the inspection reports. So I hope that this information's been helpful and that these planned updates will provide clarification around the licensor observations during their inspections and kind of what was corrected on site. But I'm trying to see if there are any new questions.
Michelle, can I just ask you, when you say you're the product owner, are you DCYF staff? Are you part of licensing?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Dave.
The duplication issue that I think Julie was referencing that we've been talking about forever, and I may have heard you incorrectly. The duplication issue that I think that we've been more concerned about rather than the grouping has been if that bloodborne pathogen violation is connected to more than one WAC, that same issue is then repeated over and over and over again. So what we've been requesting is if the bloodborne pathogen violation is connected to 4 different WACs, don't list it 4 times, list it once, and then just have a listing of the WACs that it was connected to. Because that's what's making these reports so long. It'll be employee A bloodborne pathogen violation, I'm using bloodborne pathogen. There's other ones too that are related to these different parts, and that's what it's extending it out. So I don't see, unless I'm missing something, that what you
Well, it's on
presented
her
here
screen. I mean,
fixes
she's
that.
got two different WACs listed, and I can see the safe sleep training thing in both of them.
Right.
And that's what we're saying. Why are they being listed twice
So if there's
as
one
related to 2 WACs?
Yeah, it's not about multiple people. It's about a staff person that has a whack or has a violation that's connected to 4 or 5 different whacks. And right now, the licensors, when they're putting this into the system, list that same staff person 5 times with every whack that whatever that violation is connected to.
Yeah, up in
Does
that
that
WAC.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like there might be 2 separate issues. One, you've got
Correct.
where multiple WACs are being cited, which I can let Debbie Travis speak to that one. But then you've got this issue where you've got, a single WAC has been within, maybe 2 WACs within a section have been cited and they aren't related, just like this one where, you've got childcare basics and safe sleep. So they're not really related, but the observation, it groups them together. So it makes it look like it's duplicated. And so if, let's say, the one about childcare basics was the only one that showed up on childcare check, parents looking at this are like, okay, well, you've got 2 other things that you didn't, you weren't in compliance with what was going on. So, so it sounds like there's two different issues. So we've got the one with the observations. It'll be a 1-to-1 ratio on the observations. So it should make things a lot more clearer. It should help lessen the report a little bit because you won't have that duplication happening. And then it'll make it where if you have a dispute, everything comes off nice and clean. You don't have any leftovers from anything that wasn't there. But Debbie Travis, I don't know if you have any input on the other piece about multiple citations, if something covers.
Yeah, I see that kind of 2 ways. One is in our groupings of how we how we put our WACs into our checklists, and sometimes they're grouped with a WAC number and then the subcategories. So you might have 5 or 6 subcategories listed under one rule. So that in itself could pose a problem, Dave. I think and that it could be one of those subcategories, but all of the WACs are listed. And then observation notes oftentimes match that over and over and over again. So I think that's something we really need to consider and look into. I'm hoping with what Travis said before about us streamlining our checklists and really zeroing in on health and safety, we can really look at those items and then limit that grouping as much as possible. The reason for the grouping in the past was to try to shorten the checklist. I'll just say that out loud. Because we were measuring so many rules, if we didn't group them, our checklist might have turned into 5 times longer than what it currently is, and it's already pretty darn long. So we'll look at that too. I think it's really something we really need to consider. And also, I think there's a training component here for our staff in that if they are writing things, they need to think about the one-to-one correlation of the WAC that is noted, the duty of that rule, and then addressing specifically what is out of compliance in the duty of that rule. So I appreciate that feedback as well, because that will help us. We are already building a refresher training for our staff on documentation on the inspection report. So these are key points I want to bring up with our training team to build into that platform. So I appreciate that feedback.
Clearly, it would take kind of an overhaul of the inspection report to do what we're asking. And even if you wanted to include all of the language from every related WAC for the staff person not taking safe sleep, at least you're not saying the staff person doesn't have current safe sleep. You're not listing that all over and over and over. You're just listing it under the related WACs.
Correct.
Yes. Yep. So hopefully this is just, one piece of an update that will be helpful to make things clearer. And like Travis and Debbie mentioned, there's looks happening at the checklist to how can we make that more streamlined, which I see that there's a question that got translated on why are the bloodborne pathogens not reviewed every 2 years instead of annually. I don't know, Debbie, if you have the answer to that one.
I do. I have the answer to that one. Bloodborne pathogens, and I think Matt was going to chime right in here. So it is actually a CCDF requirement that we check on bloodborne pathogen trainings on an annual basis. So that WAC you will see on every monitor checklist.
We do need to figure out in merit, though, how to get an expiration date on it. It is that the reason that one gets missed so much is that people don't know it's annually because there's no expiration date on it.
And the bloodborne pathogens test itself doesn't have there's components here, Dave, so I appreciate that because there's the time and then there's other ways to get that training. So I think we've got some work around bloodborne pathogens that will help providers. So appreciate that feedback as well.
Now, I asked, is first-time forgiveness still happening? Wasn't that going to be going away so that we could appeal something that's written up like that? What's the status on that?
And Julie, we're kind of wrapping that up into the same work that we're doing. When we went in initially to try to get rid of first-time forgiveness, we were in real threat of breaking our system altogether. So, and it was a real concern. I mean, it wasn't just oh, if you do that, it's going to break. No, it was really going to break. And that would really halt our ability to do our work and keep out, doing what we need to do with providers. So that is something we're wrapping into this checklist work itself and looking at risk items directly related again to health and safety. And I'm looking at those risk items that are lower that fell to TA, and those also fell to first-time forgiveness. So all this is being done simultaneously. So hopefully we'll see some real good results when we finish the work.
I mean, the idea for first-time forgiveness was great until we found out that once it's written down, we can't appeal first-time forgiveness stuff. It's just there. So is there a timeline on the work being done on all of this?
it's right now the checklist work that we're doing is pretty fast and furious. Ruben asked us to prioritize this work. And so we are trying our best to get through as much as we can this summer. Summer's not an ideal time to work on things, as you all know, but we're doing our best with this. So we've got a really great group of folks working on this checklist review. We will work really hand in hand with Matt to ensure we haven't missed anything in regards to our CCDF plan and what requirements we said we would meet in a certain way. But we are looking at rolling this out, Julie, as soon as possible, which could mean, I don't want to put out an actual date, but our goal is before the first of the year.
The first of your fiscal year or the first of the
First of the calendar year, so
So
January.
will there be an opportunity for you guys to come back, show the group, the providers on this committee, the changes so that we can provide some feedback?
Sure,
Should
absolutely.
so knowing that we meet every other month, what would be the best time to have you back for that feedback?
So you meet again in September, correct? That might be a perfect time. At least we
That
could
would
show
be
you
great.
progress. It might not be all the way done, but we could show you progress.
Great. And then maybe in November, we can go from there and meet again. Okay, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. That's what we're here for. We want to provide feedback.
Great.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, so other questions or more that you want to show us, Michelle?
That
Is there
was
anything
it
else?
as far as this piece. It seemed like the main concern was about what was showing on the inspection reports. So that's kind of what we wanted to focus on. So that was it that I had on my piece.
Okay, and Debbie, you alluded to Matt wanting to chime in on something.
Debbie covered it, just about the CCDF requirement on
Okay.
biocontaminants.
Okay. Other questions, guys? Anybody?
At the risk of being annoying, I know on the report that it says that if it's this kind of violation, it's 5 days. If it's this kind of a violation, it's 10 days. If it's this kind of a whatever it is, there's still a missing piece of how to deliver that information to the licensor. And everybody does it different. And I just think that that needs to be addressed. So I will just leave that there, but it's not happening consistently at all throughout the state.
Yeah, appreciate the feedback on that,
Okay.
Dave. And we're also, just so you know, we're also looking at those timeframes of correction and verifying the correction and trying to streamline that so we're not looking at multiple dates for providers because we know that's confusing for folks. So we're working on that piece as well.
Are you guys going to put out updates any other way? Dee had asked if there would be any updates this month sooner than the end of the year. How are you providing updates other than this group? Is it going to go out in the newsletter or?
Yeah, we'll
It is.
communicate it out. Are you meaning changes to checklist and inspection
Yep.
reports? Yeah. We'll communicate that out to all in multiple ways. We'll use our communication systems, but we'll also use this group and the other groups that form in our feedback loops to gather your thoughts and input before it goes out to everyone else.
Okay, well, that's great. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Are there any other things from related that you guys want to update us about? Because we are a little ahead of schedule at the moment. And we've got both Travis and Debbie here, which is great.
Well, I'll do one little celebration because I think it's a celebration of childcare licensing as well as providers. Matt talked about that we didn't quite meet our mark during COVID of monitoring all programs statewide, but we have now met that mark 2 years in a row. So we have monitored every provider who was open and able to be monitored in the last 2 fiscal years. So that's something to celebrate, not only on our part, but on your part for being open and available to monitor. So that's kudos to you as well for being there and being there for your kids every single day in order for us to come and collaborate with you. So really appreciate that.
Does that point to you guys being fully staffed now?
Not quite, but it points to a lot of people supporting childcare licensing. So it wasn't just our licensors in the field. I actually was able to monitor the last year, and that was really exciting. And so were some of our area administrators, and we had some of our support staff over in QACQI also supporting some of our work so that it freed us up to go out and monitor. So it was all hands on deck to get the work done. We're hoping that we can continue to fill vacancies so that we will remain fully staffed, but that's just an ongoing process these days.
Okay, in one of these prior meetings, you guys mentioned some bilingual licensors. Do you know how many of those you have now?
Travis, do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I can go that. Somebody asked how many licensors we have now, though. I know how many. We sit right about at 89 licensors, give or take. Sometimes we hover around 87, depending on the budget and that kind of thing. The other question that was asked was Lois asked about COVID, and yes, no states made, they didn't meet it, but one thing, the reason why we didn't meet it is because we started to do Zoom monitoring, right? Virtual monitoring, and the feds didn't see that as an acceptable way of monitoring because we weren't on site, unannounced. So that's why we didn't meet it. We still did monitor visits virtual to check on kids and to help staff, and just a lot of it was just the support at the beginning of it was just checking in. How can we help? But yeah, we've turned that corner, and our staff have done an amazing job back-to-back years. So
okay, well,
it's
I'm going to
awesome.
read the comment from Janelle. It seems that this group today is about 1/3 providers, 2/3 DCYF staff. Is there any talk of incentivizing attendance or involvement for providers? Previously, we tossed around the idea of proving extra subpool hours, but this wasn't really helpful to all providers. Thoughts? I'm paying an extra staff person for my time I'm on here today in order to maintain ratio. I don't know if that's something that anybody wants to. I mean, in terms of incentivizing monetarily, I don't have a comment on that, but I would love to see more providers on here. And, if anybody on here wants to share with other providers, that would be excellent. I like to check the DCY Facebook page and see if they've shared it. I forgot to check it today, but and then Marlene Marlene, I think, translated a suggestion about the pathogen training. It says, I think that a good proposal is that the pathogen training be added to the DCY provider portal as well as safe sleep. And we would save paying for the pathogen training. And it would be much easier to be in compliance with that certificate because in some cases there are no pathogen only trainings available. It's on the LNI website is my understanding, and you can have somebody maybe in an admin role at your center provide that training to the rest of your staff. Oh, Lois said years ago we asked about STARS hours. Is that a possibility now? I'm thinking, is that for bloodborne pathogen?
She's talking about for this meeting as an
Oh,
incentive.
that is a good idea.
I just put a note in the chat. I think, one of the things DCYF can commit to is going back and having some internal conversation around how we can best support and incentivize participation. And I put in there within existing resources, just thinking about sort of what we can do within pieces, but we are happy to have that conversation and appreciate the ideas that have been put in the chat.
I love that idea. Certainly admin STARS hours are super hard to find, and it feels like this would, to me, it feels like that would be where it would go. So Okay, well, we are still ahead of time, so let's just move to the Menti and we will move on if our next presenter is here. Well, we know we have Travis. Do we have Judy Jaramillo already here? Oh, I'm
Disculpe.
sorry. Gloria has her hand up.
Sí, por favor. Sí, gracias. Mire, quería comentar, bueno, primero que mencionaron que en estos 2 últimos años han visitado, han hecho más visitas que anteriormente los licenciadores. Yo quería preguntar o mencionar, lo pregunté en un meeting local, pero no me respondieron. ¿Cuánto es el tiempo que se te tiene que dilatar un licenciador en una visita en un hogar? Yo hablo de family home, porque en lo personal yo no he tenido la experiencia que se queden mucho tiempo en mi daycare, ¿verdad? Pero he escuchado de otras proveedoras que algunos licenciadores, no todos, algunos se quedan 4, 5 horas, 6 horas ahí en el daycare, y yo siento que como que ocupan mucho tiempo para estar en ese lugar. No sé yo si el quedarse en ese lugar solamente se sientan a hacer otros trabajos que tengan de oficina y están ahí en la computadora, o realmente necesitan todo ese tiempo para observar a una persona. Pienso que deberían de acortar el tiempo nada más de ir a lo que van, y también hacia a los licenciadores, a los proveedores les dejan continuar con su trabajo. No sé yo si ustedes sepan que en un daycare, cuando llega una persona extraña, los niños como que se ponen un poco más inquietos. Los niños empiezan a, a salirse de la rutina, y eso también descontrola a los proveedores. Entonces sí sería bueno saber si tienen que estar 1 hora, 2 horas, o cuánto tiempo necesitan más o menos de estar ahí. Pero yo en lo personal, escuchando de 4, 5, 6 horas, se me hace un tiempo exagerado, lo digo con mucho respeto, a menos que tengan algún complaint y que necesiten estar ahí, pero pues también que se lo digan al proveedor, pero que no lo tengan como intimidado ahí, que tienen que estar ahí, y ellos se cohíben también. Entonces, esa es mi pregunta. ¿Hay un tiempo en específico? Y si hay ese tiempo, pues si se respetara, pienso que también los proveedores tendrían más tiempo para atender otros asuntos fuera de ese daycare donde ellos están.
Travis, I wasn't sure if you wanted to respond or.
I was waiting for you is what I was doing.
Well, we'll tag team it. How's that?
Yes, yes.
First of all, thank you for the question, Gloria. There isn't a time frame associated with the visit. This is one of the reasons, though, that we are looking at our checklists themselves, because they are very long. And by streamlining our checklists, we are hoping that that will, in turn, shorten the time that we have in a facility or in a program. So appreciate that feedback. We too honor the fact that you are providing care for children, and we too believe that the children come first. Our job is to come in and check on you and check to see how you're doing with your program and how compliant you are. And oftentimes, like you said, there are reasons that the visit gets extended. So I don't have a yes or no answer, and I don't have a time committed answer for you, but know that we have heard this concern, and we are working on ways to use our systems, our resources, and our training with our licensing staff to really streamline the visits so that we are, one, focused on health and safety, and two, providing opportunity for conversations that don't take up the whole day, but rather meet your specific needs, so that we can help you grow your program.
And I don't have anything to add. Debbie nailed it.
And it might seem like a licensor is getting caught up on other work or something when they're just listening and observing. I don't know. I have not experienced that, but I certainly don't want to dismiss anyone's experience. Okay. Oh, Jacqueline has her hand up. Jacqueline,
Sí,
did you have
hola,
something to
buenas
share?
tardes. Yo soy una proveedora que su licenciadora se quedaba 7 horas en mi cuidado y se quedaba 7 horas en mi cuidado y la tuve como licenciadora por 8 años y la vez que se estuvo menos tiempo fueron 6 horas y media y se iba de mi cuidado no había nada incorrecto. Y a mí siempre traté yo en ocasiones quería ir a hablar con la supervisora, pero decía yo, bueno, posiblemente es el tiempo que se toma ella para estar aquí. Y la última vez que estuvo ya casi eran 8 horas y le tuve que decir que pues que ya se me había hecho bastante el tiempo que estaba y que yo necesitaba descansar porque mi día iba a empezar. Ella llegó, ella se fue básicamente fueron casi 8 horas y ella se fue a las 7:15 de la tarde desde que llegó temprano. Y a mí me pareció muchísimo y siempre me parecía bastante, pero nunca me fui a quejar porque pues yo pensaba que en realidad era lo que ella necesitaba estar y lo que se me hacía un poco difícil entender era que no encontraba nada. O sea, se iba con mi acuerdo de cumplimiento limpio. En otras ocasiones una cosa, dos cosas mínimas, pero sí duraba, la última vez duró casi 8 horas y am, no es malo decirlo, pero pues qué bueno que ya dejó su trabajo porque de verdad era muy frustrante para mí tenerla todo ese tiempo. Lo que dice la proveedora Gloria, sí, los niños empiezan ellos a la rutina, a quebrarse la rutina, a estar, pues no sé, los niños, su comportamiento es diferente porque hay una persona y más que estaba tantísimo tiempo. Entonces, yo nunca encontré cuál era el motivo y pues nunca se lo pregunté porque a veces uno se siente como que imponen mucho, en unas ocasiones sí imponen mucho y pues uno dice, bueno, eso es la regulación, por eso ahorita que Gloria pregunta, ¿cuánto es el tiempo? Para mí, mi nueva licenciadora que me asignaron, estuvo la última vez aquí, estuvo 1 hora y 50 y a mí se me hizo un sueño hecho realidad porque después de estar con una licenciadora que duraba casi 8 horas, pues esto se me hizo que pasó un minuto, de verdad. Y sí, yo puedo dar constancia de que eso pasaba. Y no quiero decir el nombre de ella porque ya no está como licenciadora y pues nunca tuve ningún problema porque pues yo creo que le gustaba mucho estar aquí en mi cuidado. Es lo único que puedo pensar, porque a cualquiera pueden revisar el tiempo que estuve yo con ella, de que ella era mi licenciadora y pueden ver que mi acuerdo de cumplimiento siempre estaba limpio. Gracias.
I'm glad that you provided the example, the experience. I do wonder, I haven't seen I haven't had a monitoring survey come my way. I don't remember what was on it when we saw it. Is there a space on there for just documenting something like that and identifying the region and licensor that you're talking about while still maintaining the ability to be anonymous?
Yes,
If you wanted-
Julie, there is an open dialogue box on
Okay.
the survey, so folks can type in what their concerns are or their celebrations, whatever they want to put in that box.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Well, we are going to wrap it up. The Menti is in the chat somewhere. I think it's a little buried. Oh, sorry. Lois had a comment. Back to the insurance question. If after changes are made to the child care check and more facilities lose insurance for items that are easy to fix but may look bad on paper, for example, first aid that may have expired the week prior to the monitoring visit, what is the contingency plan to help those providers keep the doors open?
I would just say that there's still discussions above my level on this topic, and so some of that stuff has to take place as well. You know, we'll do everything from our end, you know, to and we'll continue to have conversations about it if it doesn't get better, and because yes, we do want to keep folks' doors open. So more to come on that, Lois.
Okay, so high level discussions are happening on this. So is there maybe a guess of a timeline when we might have some answers?
I would have to talk to Ruben about that and get back to you, honestly.
And,
Okay.
Since, yeah,
and Travis and Debbie, I think in some respects, some of this is connected back to like the Office of the Insurance Commissioner conversation.
yes,
And so I think that's, Lois, part of what we're navigating here too, is that DCYF doesn't oversee that. Emily Arneson from our group is helping to be a connector with the Office of Insurance Commission. So maybe what we can commit to is getting some next steps around that work group, or where OIC is in that study and report process. I know that doesn't address the exact thing, but at least give some timelines.
Okay, yeah, this definitely is a topic that we need to have return. Dee said, my new licensor this year did a site visit and had not been added to my facility profile and had not been introduced before she rang the doorbell. She just wanted to go right into a classroom and bypass introductions. I've heard the same from other providers. Happened to me as well. Get it. Are you guys sending out, this one was her new licensor, but for me, I had like a licensor from another region that was filling in and helping out different regions, which I did not enjoy. We all believe in those relationships, and letting a stranger in is weird. I mean, so, and not having them in merit is also something that Dee had checked. So
yeah. One thing I would say is all of our folks should have DCYF badges on when they're going out, and providers, you can if you don't see a badge, you can ask to see a badge. I actually think this is more of a conversation we're going to have this next year, unfortunately. So yes, we will do our best to make sure that the system's up to date. I would also encourage providers to call the supervisor if that's an issue. In the case that's in the chat, yeah, we should be introducing ourselves and welcomed into your guys' facilities, and it's not a barge-in situation. So, Dee, if you want to have more conversation with that, I'd love to hear the details on that situation. But more back to the, we should be coming to your facility, explaining why we're there, having a badge, communicating, not just barging in. So, the time frame is difficult. This is the conversation because the feds require that it is unannounced. That is the difficulty thing. It's within the year, right? It's within the year that we have to do the monitor visit, so it's not necessarily going to fall on the same date or around the same time, is the issue.
okay, well, great, thank you, and thanks for all your handling questions off the cuff that you may not have expected today. We are ready to move on to our next topic. The Menti, if you want to provide feedback, is about 4 comments up in the chat. So I'm going to just thank our presenters. I know it was Matt and Michelle, but also thank Debbie and Travis for chiming in so much. Passing it over to Dave.
All right, we're just gonna keep Travis right on the the thing here. So next is gonna be our last major subject of the day is gonna be pre-licensing updates. And so Travis and Judy are here to talk about the enhanced pre-licensing process, including application support and updates to how WAC violations are reflected in WA Compass. So Travis and Judy, I'll let you guys take it away.
And Dave, I'm really just gonna hand that hot potato right to Judy because she's gonna jump in to talk about pre-licensing and hopefully we'll have some questions to answer at the end for folks. So Judy Jaramillo, take it away.
All right, thanks, Travis. I hope everybody can hear me. So pre-licensing work began. You can go to the next slide, or do I have power to move it? Thank you very much. Pre-licensing work began back in 2022 when it was determined that there needed to be support with grant recipients. This year, we are expanding the work to include all potential applicants. The goal is really to provider readiness to open their doors. If you can go to the next slide, that would be great. So currently and into the future, the pre-licensing team works with many of our partners that support or have requirements for operating childcare in Washington State. I'm not going to go through all of them. I think all of you can read that, but we do work very closely with all of these individuals to help the potential providers. The next slide will give you what the original scope of the work was that we started as working with just grant recipients, employer-supported care, and organizational licensed individuals. So for the first 18 months of the work, the team scored like 1,100 grants, I'm sorry. And then they merged with the health specialist. So they came in and also worked with pre-licensing. They provided technical assistance to about 150 potential providers. And then they also worked on initial applications, which is about 75. That was at the very beginning of the work. So now we're going to be expanding. You can go to the next slide. Now in August, our pre-licensing unit is going to be working with anybody who is interested in becoming licensed. And the unit is going from having 4 pre-licensing specialists and 2 health specialists to now we're going to have 8 pre-licensing specialists, 2 health specialists, and 2 supervisors. My math is not great today, folks. I apologize. We are going to be working with every single individual who is interested in becoming licensed. So they will be coming to our team first. They're going to be getting technical assistance on what it means to be a licensed child care provider. They're going to be given a lot of tools in their toolkit to be successful. We're hoping to streamline the licensing application process during this time, so that when the person is ready for their initial visit, they are completely ready to serve the children that they want to serve. Each person is going to be assigned a pre-licensing specialist, and there will be also a health specialist that will help with health concerns or needs for each of the potential providers that we will be working with. So next slide. So what is the technical assistance we're going to be providing? We're going to be doing feasibility visits, plan reviews, looking at the facility. They're actually going to go out on the site to kind of get an idea of what the program is going to look like. Going to be discussing with them what the licensing process is. We're going to provide them with resources and support that they may need. And we're also going to be really reviewing their handbook and their policies to make sure they're meeting the WAC requirements. So all of those things are part of what's being enhanced by the pre-licensing team. We're also going to be working on the next slide, the WAC interpretation. What does it mean? How can they follow the WAC when they open their program? So we're going to be covering all the elements of the that's in WAC, like culturally relevant materials. What does this mean? What does it mean to have a menu? What is it? What does your kitchen need? All of the things that all of you who are licensed providers know you need to be aware of and you need to be in compliance with to best serve the children. The goal is that everybody will come in ready to have a quality program when they open their doors. I believe that licensing regulations or foundational licensing is the foundation of quality. And so it's the first line of quality and every child deserves that, right? Every single child deserves quality childcare. And that's what our goal is. That when we work with these folks, when they're finished working with us, we will then hand them off to the local office, and there will be what we're calling a soft handoff. So once we have finished working with them and we know that they are ready to have their initial visit, there will be a meeting between the pre-licensing specialist and the potential licenser, so we can give them a summary of what we have worked with this individual. They will see their profile. They'll be able to ask us any questions that we may have. And we will also be able to, at some point, introduce them to the individual provider. We will be scheduling, if a person is opening up a center, we'll be scheduling the fire marshal visits, working very closely with the fire marshal's office so that the person is, like I said, we're hoping 100% ready to open their doors when the licensor will get the application packet or the profile. They won't need anything other than to go out on that initial visit so that the person can get issued their license.
Hey, Judy, just before we go too far, the impression that everyone has is that licensing already schedules the fire marshal visit. So is the change that instead of it being the licensor, it's the pre-license office that's doing that instead?
Right. We are part of the child care licensing division. And so we have moved the work that was being done for the application process that was being done at the local office is now being done by the pre-licensing team. And yes, it is the pre-licenser who is like a licensor who will be scheduling the visits with the fire marshal, just like they currently schedule them now when they're working with people.
And then the other question that came in was curious about the pre-licensing staff. Are they based like geographically? Is there one for region, or is it going to be a virtual relationship depending on where they live?
Right now, the 4 folks we have one in Eastern Washington, one in Southwest, and 2 from King County North. Our hope is that we're able to get more staff geographically located so that the staff aren't having to travel far distances to visit. They do go out to these facilities. A lot of the work is done virtually because it can be done virtually. But if there is a need for a visit, they do schedule a visit to go see the facility.
That is everything in the chat for the moment.
Okay. So if you can go to the next slide, to summarize, they'll be working with everybody who's interested in becoming licensed, like I said before. We will be reviewing all their application materials, but that's not our main focus. Our main focus is providing technical assistance to help the person understand the complexities of being a licensed child care provider. It's more than just paperwork. It's those interactions with the children. It's knowing that you're a business owner. It's knowing that you have to navigate zoning. It's knowing all of those things, connecting them with our partners that we already have great relationships with. If they have some specialty that they can provide support for, we will be connecting them with those partners as well. Our goal is that everybody coming into the industry are taking this seriously because our children are our most precious asset. And we want that to be their focus coming in to when they get licensed. So there you have it. We're hoping to launch this we have already started doing the work in little pieces, but the full-fledged stuff will be starting now in August once we have the 4 staff trained.
So we have a question in the chat to clarify, do all new centers, thinking of organizational expansions, need to go through the pre-licensing process?
That we've had many of the similar questions. They will come to our team and we will assess what kind of support they may need. Some folks may, if they're from an organization, they may not need a lot of support from our team, but we're going to make sure that their packet is ready, right? That they are completely ready, that the fire marshal gets scheduled and everything happens. We don't plan on delaying people's process because we feel they have to go through all these little steps. There's some folks who are coming in and they don't even understand what it means to run a business, much less care for children. We'll be working a lot more with them. If it's somebody who's already been in childcare and they're opening up another location, the work with our team is not going to be as big.
What begins the relationship? Hitting submit on an application?
There's a couple of ways they can come in. It could be that after they've taken orientation and they come in that door, or they can come through the welcome box. We have a mailbox, dcyf.welcome@dcyf.wa.gov. That's what it is, right? They can come in through the mailbox, tell us they're interested in becoming licensed, and then we'll direct them as to what they need to do.
Okay, but for those that feel comfortable getting through all of the phases up to hitting submit in the application, that would be the first time that they would be connected. If they're not seeking assistance, otherwise, they will be, instead of seeking, it will be given by the time they hit submit. Is that the idea? Because some people won't seek that. At a certain point, it'll feel like this person is being assigned to them. And so I'm wondering, for those that are not seeking anything and are just going through the process, at a certain point, this person is going to come into their lives. And I'm assuming that point is when they hit submit on the application.
Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Dave. So actually it will be provided prior to the point of them submitting their application. This is all prior to everything, to the point of that they submit. The thing is that we have stumbled into a number of cases where folks haven't contacted us and they've gone and built a center, and then they submit their application, and then we've gone in and said, hey, you need to fix this, you need to do this, and there wasn't any there wasn't any planning prior to that, right? We weren't brought, so we really are encouraging folks, even if you've got 10 centers and you've been doing this for 30 years, we want to help you from the get-go so it saves you money, time. This is really about fast tracking this entry in, and everybody's going to be at a different spot in the child care system. Some people are going to come in, it's going to be fast, some it's going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah, I get that. I'm saying there has to be from a philosophical perspective, I get that. But in terms of the actual, how do you stop somebody from filling out the application? Like, how do you get connected with them to be able to give them this contact if they haven't indicated to you at all that they're interested in doing that?
A lot of it's going to come in by the welcome box. Some's going to be referrals from the field, right? So you could, in your case, it could be, hey, we're going to open a center in this area. Oh, this is you talk to your local licensor and you're saying that we're going to open a center in this area. Then they would be, hey, go to the welcome box, or they're going to send a referral to the welcome box that you're looking at opening another center is what it's going to be. So it'll still kind of come from the field, is what I'm saying.
I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of people that don't do those things.
Yep.
And so
they'll submit an application, right?
Yes.
Okay, those will still come to us.
That's what I'm asking.
Is routing the application.
I'm saying that there's a group of people that are seeking that assistance. There is another group of people that are not seeking, and at a certain point will just be given this person. So I think there's a difference there.
And what it is, I want to be really, really clear. We're not, what we're doing is taking a part of our current process that's already happening. Applications are received by the local office. The admin support reviews the application for completeness. Then it gets assigned to a licenser, and then the licensor takes it from there. Those are all coming to us for our team to assess that, and it'll still get moved forward. And if somebody is If we see that everything is there, we probably will spend very little time with them and it'll get moved on to the licensor to do the visit.
Okay.
If we know that they need a fire marshal visit, we will be scheduling that. And we will be doing kind of like, almost like a triage for those that have been doing the industry for a long time. And
Yeah.
we just need some individual things for that particular site. So it is going to be individualized based on the person coming in the door to want to open childcare, whether they're brand new or whether they've had 15 programs. And we've already
Yep.
been working with folks like that already.
Yeah.
So this team has already figured out methods to deal with all different types of interest.
Okay. So let's go to the chat. So the first one is, I hope this is on topic. I'm wondering about the requirement of providers taking the license orientation. Will this requirement be removed for existing providers opening a new site, or will that still be required?
Orientation still required.
The two early
One-
learning orientation modules.
Well, I think somebody in early learning can speak to how orientation has been updated to where the orientation is now program specific. And
No, well, for early learning, there's two. So the person that is the primary contact and the licensee, if they're going to be opening that center, they need to take the two early learning orientations. There's a 45-minute one and a 3.5-ish hour one. So that's a requirement, and it has to be inputted into the application. So this person's just wondering, because of this extra help, will that orientation still be required?
Yes.
Orientation
Okay.
will still be required.
Excellent. And we have somebody asked if the email could be included, and Diana was kind enough to put that in there, so that is great. Next is there a possibility that when the applicant submits their application to have the site reviewed, they can shorten it to 60 days instead of 90?
That is our goal, is when we get the interest, when we review the person's profile, that we can move people along as long as they have everything ready, right? And if it's a center, we are also dependent on when the fire marshal can go out and do their visit as well. So,
Yep.
But our goal is to help things move along a little bit quicker. We can't guarantee 60 days. We will just we'll come back with some data once we have launched.
Janelle's excited about the new process, sounds super helpful. Lois says, curious, during pre-licensing, does DCYF still bring in a panel of current providers to speak with prospective licensees? It's been years, but I found that helpful when I was new to the field.
I remember that. When I was the licensor for orientation, we would do that. We have not implemented that. However, folks have shown an interest in providing us with some testimonials on their experience. So we are exploring those options. But I hear what you're saying, Lois, and I do agree. Those are very helpful. So
excellent. And then are licensors involved in being assigned in pre-licensing, or are there specific people doing the pre-licensing? Is it a different group of people, or are they existing licensors that are doing it?
Some of our current staff had been licensors, and we really do look at people are welcome to apply for the position, and it's whoever qualifies. And the 4 people who have shown interest recently are potentially were licensed. I can't remember, honestly.
But they wouldn't be, I think the question is, they wouldn't be playing dual roles.
No.
No.
They are strictly pre-licensing specialists, and then the licensors are licensors.
Got it. Okay.
Dave, can I add to that?
Oh, yeah.
That's the idea here. This is more specializing on the front end is what it is.
Yep.
And taking some of that away from the field so they can concentrate on more of the maintenance of being licensed. And this is the front end. So yes, this will be a specialized unit that will help folks come into the child care system.
Cool. Now there's something that's blowing my mind that Michelle was saying, that it changed in June, that there's now just a single orientation. I don't remember that coming out communication wise.
Yeah,
and
it did.
I perhaps missed it, but that's awesome.
It did. There's orientation for family homes, orientation for centers, and orientation for school age.
Yeah, if that can, and maybe it was too. I don't remember reading it the other day, but the consolidated newsletter would be also a great place for that to go to. There's a lot of people that are here that aren't connected to a specific site. And if you're not an actual provider that's connected to a site, you actually don't get those types of communication. So having it be in that consolidated newsletter is awesome. That's been a really helpful place for information like that to exist. Oh, let's see. What does this say? Will payments ever be online versus a check? Oh, that took 1 or 2 weeks to clear. I think
That's being explored.
excellent. That'll go the way of the fax machines, right?
Oh, right, right.
Yeah, the fire marshal, I think it's just important to note that it's the state fire marshal that does the inspection, that it is, and that is arranged by DCYF. That is not arranged by the provider themselves.
Dave, I will say it's different for family homes.
Oh, sorry.
Family homes are the local fire department. They ask to come out. Some locals do, some do not, right? So it just depends on if they have somebody there to come out. If they don't, then they opt out of that is what it is. And yeah.
Thanks for
So-
saying that, Travis.
Yeah.
I'm blinded by my childcare center experience.
Just a quick reminder to pause between speakers. I know our interpreters are saying they're having a tough time keeping up with everyone, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Marlene, for the reminder.
Does anybody have a hand raised? I know that we've cleared the questions in the chat. Judy or Travis, did you have an additional topic, or did we clear what you had intended to talk about today?
I think we covered it. I'll check with Judy. We would love to come back and share once this is, up and running and some data here with you all. Yeah. Judy, you have anything?
I don't have anything else to add regarding pre-licensing. The staff is anxious for August to come.
All right. Thank you, Judy, and thank you, Travis. The Menti for this particular section is now in the chat. So if you want to click on that and add, and it's popping up on the screen right now. Thanks, Jessica. If you want to pop in any feedback and additional questions about this last topic, you can do so here, and then that will live in the feedback loop as we move forward. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it back to Katie to wrap up this time that we've had together.
Yes, this was a great meeting today. Lots of great information. I feel like the meetings in the last couple rounds have been so informational and so helpful. I just wish we could get some more providers on these meetings. So if you are a provider and you know any other providers in your area or are on Facebook with a local childcare provider type group, we would love for you guys to share it. We want to get as much of this information out across the state. So please, please, please share when we have our meetings. Please also do the mentees. They absolutely help us for future reference and for our speakers and the departments that come and take time to be a part of our meetings. So yeah, any last questions, anything lingering before we are done? You want to raise your hand or just unmute and talk? All right.
I think Sandra has a hand raised. Oh, sorry, Travis.
I was just gonna say I saw the comments in the Menti, and yeah, we can have licensors kind of do some recruiting out there and share and send folks your way is what we can do.
Sounds good.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Sandra Nelson. As I'm going through and checking on training for my staff, it made me think about the training portal. They are having problems with the mandated reporter training. It keeps locking up on them. So just wanted to know if there's a fix for that, or are we close to migrating over to the new portal or anything like that?
Sandra, this is Nicole or Travis.
Go ahead, Nicole, because I was gonna say I need to go check.
Yeah, that's what I need to say as well. I need to check with the team. But the other thing I'll just note, just as far as the training portal, so we are staying on the same learning management system. So there's not a transition to a new learning management system, Sandra, if that's what you're referring to. But we will follow up on what's happening with, you said, mandated reporter training. Okay.
Oops, thanks.
Well, wonderful. Well, just a reminder that we do have our next meeting scheduled for September 17th, 2025. I don't even want to say September because that means kids are back to school, open houses, all that good stuff that comes with the fall coming. But please share the date with your provider friends, your daycare friends, your preschool friends, your family home friends. We would so appreciate it. So thank you today. I'm sure it's gorgeous across the state. Go out or stay in because it's quite hot today. But enjoy your day. Please. Thank you so much.